Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Rishi Sunak tells the Conservatives to unite or die as he prepares to take over as Prime Minister.
A very good morning. 6 o'clock now on Tuesday, the 25th of October. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Rosie.
Here's what's leading the news for you this morning. Rishi Sunak will take over as Prime Minister today after meeting with the King. In an address to Conservatives behind closed doors last night, he called for unity within the party as he prepares to name his new cabinet.
Well, the outgoing Prime Minister, Liz Truss, will leave Downing Street later this morning, following a farewell statement outside of Number 10.
Well, it comes as new figures are released by the Office for National Statistics showing how the UK's groceries have been affected by the cost of living crisis.
And the Pride of Britain Awards took place last night, celebrating the achievements of people who make a significant contribution to our country. Well, we're going to meet one of the winners and bring you all the highlights from the star-studded event.
I know one of the people who was there last night. I don't think they won, actually, but one of the people, Paul Minter, we've had on this show many, many times. A couple of weeks ago, he was last on. He was there, up for an award. Shame he didn't get it. But anyway, we'd love to hear from you this morning. Anything you want to talk about, your local heroes, perhaps, in your community, or your thoughts on politics, which I'm sure will come through anyway. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Well, the new leader of the Conservative Party, Rishi Sunak, will meet King Charles this morning, where he'll be formally appointed as Britain's new Prime Minister. It's after he addressed the country yesterday.
It is the greatest privilege of my life to be able to serve the party I love and give back to the country I owe so much to. The United Kingdom is a great country, but there is no doubt we face a profound economic challenge. We now need stability and unity, and I will make it my utmost priority to bring our party and our country together.
So the new leader of the Conservative Party makes it clear a call for unity. Despite that, some Conservative Party supporters are already cancelling their memberships following Rishi's victory.
Well, we'll be getting reaction from across the country. Here's what people in Mr Sunak's constituency have had to say.
Well, he's been good as far as a local MP goes. I mean, the times that I've had any problems, they've been sorted pretty fast. We'll have to wait and see what Prime Minister's going to be like.
brilliant. He's an excellent constituency MP, always has been, works hard, very nice person. I think he's sensible, clever. I think he'll make a really good PM.
Nice bloke. They just need to know what the public want, don't they? Bring everything down, back down to where it should be.
Let's find out more. Joining us now is the Deputy Editor of the newspaper Cap X, Alice Denby. Very good morning to you. So, we thought this time yesterday Rishi Sunak would be the next leader of the party and therefore today Prime Minister. We've heard the views of those individuals. How do you think he'll fare as Prime Minister?
I think a lot of Conservatives will be waking up this morning feeling more positive than they have for a while. I think he was clearly the best choice to unify the party. I think you saw in the end, even supporters of Boris Johnson and Penny Mordaunt rolling in behind him. His task today will be to appoint his new cabinet. I think we'll be seeing him really make an effort to reach out to all wings of the party.
So are we going to see significant changes everywhere, apart from perhaps the Chancellor?
I think it will be more modest than we expect. So, I mean, some people we can expect to lose, but I think there'll be a lot of people who will keep their jobs. I think what he'll be focusing on is people who are competent to deliver, and people who are doing a good job, I think he won't see a reason to move them. However, there will be sort of big beasts coming back, people like Dominic Raab, who is a keen supporter. I think you want to be looking for some of the more junior ministers as well, who are quick to support him the first time around, people like Oliver Dowden, perhaps some of the other ministers who worked from the Treasury previously. Maybe Michael Gove.
But some Boris supporters, some Liz Truss supporters. I mean, he's going to have to learn from the mistakes of Liz Truss, isn't he, and have a broad cabinet.
Yes, absolutely. I think, it'd be interesting to see what he does with people like James Cleverly and Nadeem Zahawi, who sort of supported Boris Johnson and then were massively surprised, I think, when he pulled out. But yeah, as you say, I think unity, as we saw him stress in his statement, will be his main concern as he appoints his new cabinet today.
For him, it was clear, unite or die, basically saying, we're not going to win the next general election unless we really get our act together. How does he do that?
I think he just needs to demonstrate competence. He needs to, the economic situation is clearly going to be, first and foremost for him. And with his experience as Chancellor, he should be well placed to reassure the markets. We've already seen them sort of rally with the news of him becoming Prime Minister. So he has to say, but it's an enormous challenge. This winter is going to be really, really hard for people. And we've already seen that the energy price cap is now going to end in April. What does he do after that? It's a really unenviable in-tray for any new leader coming in.
No, it's a lot of... I mean, with things like the price cap and what have you, I mean, what people were expecting, perhaps in the mini-budget that never happened, was support that was going to be much more targeted. Is that going to be the focus, do you think, moving forward? Actually delivering for those people who really need the help and everyone else just having to muddle through as best they can?
Yeah, I do think we're going to see a much more targeted approach. The difficulty is how you actually do that, because the government is actually very bad at knowing what constitutes a household, if you see what I mean. So people on universal credit, that's quite easy. We know who they are. We know where to find them. That's about 20% of the population. So those people are easy to help. But people on middle incomes who are also going to struggle are much harder to identify. So say if you did something like, OK, people who are high-rate taxpayers don't get any help. Well, what if you have a household of like flatmates where one earns a lot and the rest don't? It's very difficult to see how you target people effectively like that. We've also seen Rishi Sunak's previous approach as Chancellor, which is kicking in this week, was just to give everybody £400. Now, that's not really sustainable going forward. One positive, though, is that the gas price at the moment is falling, so this may end up cheaper than we expect.
One of the big sort of concerns a few people had yesterday was that first delivery he made, and we just gave you a glimpse of it at home. It was a bit uncomfortable and a bit wooden, and that's not really how we're used to seeing him perform. Why do you think that was?
Yeah, it was not his best performance, shall we say. Let's hope that that's an exception. We've seen that he can really pull off big moments during the pandemic. That moment where he announced furlough and he said, I will do whatever it takes. I feel like that really reached out to people. So he does have that ability. That wasn't on display yesterday. Let's hope today, outside Downing Street, he...
Do you know, it's a bit unfair, though, because, I was saying to you in the break, wasn't it, before we came on air, what an awful performance that was. However, I'm also someone who said during the leadership campaign he was far too slick. and something about that sleekness was unappealing. So he's sort of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't.
Yes, as you say, it's very difficult to get that balance right. He's going to have his big moment outside Downing Street today, and we'll hope he kind of kicks it up a notch.
Yeah. And being personable is going to be really important for him, because one of the criticisms people have had is that because of his own personal wealth, how's he going to really connect with people who are battling with, well, how do I do my supermarket shopping?
Yeah, absolutely. There was I don't know if you saw this polling yesterday, a sort of word cloud, like what's the word you most associate with Rishi Sunak, and it was rich.
That's interesting.
Many other things, clever, competent, those kind of things as well, but rich was the biggest one. So I think that is a problem for him, but the way that you get around that is really by delivering and finding a way to help people who are struggling. And you saw, in your package you spoke to his constituents who seem to really like him, and those are the people who he represents. So as I said at the top, I think Conservatives should be feeling more positive than they have for a while. OK, well, we shall see. Alice, thank you very much indeed. If you're a Conservative, are you feeling more positive this morning? I mean, look, let's hope it's a step in the right direction for the country. You've got to hope for the best for the country, haven't you, in all of this? And so, maybe a bit more stability moving forward. Fingers crossed.
Well, whatever you think of Rishi Sunak, becoming the country's first Asian Prime Minister is a historic milestone. Our national reporter Paul Hawkins has been speaking to members of London's South Asian community to find out how they feel about the new Prime Minister.
I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
From the shortest-serving PM in history to one of the shortest-serving male PMs this century.
So many of you say to me, wow, you're even shorter in real life.
He's only 5'6", but achieving the highest office in the land is a big moment.
Let me tell you a story about a young woman almost a lifetime ago.
During the leadership campaign in the summer, we heard a lot about his background.
And the love of her family.
He's also spoken about his experience of racism, telling the BBC in 2019 how he'd experienced the P word while sitting in a fast food restaurant with his family when he was young. It's seared in my memory, he said. It stung in a way that is hard to explain. And that's why the UK's first British Asian and Hindu PM means a lot to worshippers here. This is one of Europe's biggest Hindu temples in Neasden, northwest London. They're celebrating Diwali, the Hindu festival of light, on the day Sunak won the race to be PM.
I think it's a very proud and historic moment for the British Indian community. I think more importantly for the younger generation to take inspiration that, people of all backgrounds, from all ethnicities, can aspire to the highest office. They can engage in public service and be a part of that world. I think that's very significant.
But not everyone from an Asian background thinks the PM's colour is relevant.
It's not about race. It's someone who needs... Our country's, at the moment, our country's, on the downfall.
I think it's actually quite positive for us as British Asians, of course, because it's, the first time it's ever happened, and it's opened up doors for, us younger generation. So I'm a student here in Birmingham, and I feel like, it gives us the opportunity and the inspiration to, go after a job like that, knowing that somebody from our background has got that.
At 42 years old, he's also the youngest PM for over 200 years.
Well, when I was a kid, I wanted to be in a Star Wars movie, so that's probably not a sensible thing to do. But I'm a massive football fan. I'm from Southampton, and if I would get to be able to run Southampton football... Oh, wow, is there a Saints fan here? Look at that!
This was 3 years ago when he was Chief Secretary to the Treasury, seeing the latest flick with the then-Chancellor Sajid Javid. The force, however, was with Sunak. A few months later, he became Chancellor and had to borrow record sums of money to support the economy through COVID, dishing out his Eat Out to Help Out scheme to support the hospitality industry. The following April, along with Boris Johnson, he was fined for breaking lockdown rules but refused to resign, choosing instead to step down as Chancellor in July after the PM's handling of Chris Pincher's resignation as Deputy Chief Whip. Sunak's departure triggering the downfall of Boris Johnson's government, something the former PM's supporters have never forgiven him for. But September's loser is October's winner.
I'd like to pay tribute to Liz Truss for her dedicated public service to the country.
Can he unite his party and get inflation down? And does he have the ability to win over voters in the famous red wall seats? He'll need all his Jedi mind tricks. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Well, how is all this going down with Conservative members and in fact, just anyone, actually, any voter right across the country? Well, let's talk to one of our viewers and listeners, Francis Moore, who's in beautiful Salisbury this morning, one of my most favourite places, Francis. Beautiful, love the cathedral. How lucky you are to live there. What do you make of all of this?
Well, I've got great joy this morning, to be honest, Stephen and Rosie. At last, I think we've got a grown-up in the room to come and run our country. So, yeah, I'm very excited, actually. Oddly, my membership renewal for the Conservative Party, and I've been on universal credit and benefits, so I'm really at the lower income level of Conservative support, now transitioning to be an old age pensioner at 66. But no, I'm renewing because I'm really excited. I think there was temptations with both Boris and Truss to move away from the party. Now I think we've got a Prime Minister, as has been said in Paul's package, of Asian descent. I think that's a unifying force in itself. And I'm sure he's going to do what he said all through the hustings, which is to build a cabinet of all the talents. And I think that's going to be wonderful and will be very unifying for the party. And I'm actually just really excited. I don't underestimate the in tray he's got. That is quite phenomenal, but he has got a huge brain. You know, I'm hoping my local MP, John Glenn, is going to get a promotion in the Treasury because he was very loyal to Sunak throughout. But we'll have to wait and see. Everything seems to be very closely guarded at the moment as to cabinet posts, because there'll be a lot of people vying to get into a government of unity. So I think it's fantastic, actually. I'm really, really cheered up, really cheered up. And so let's look forward to next chapters. Of course, he's not Prime Minister yet. He has to go and see the King later this morning. But hopefully that's just a formality. You know, commiserations to Liz Truss, commiserations to Penny Mordaunt, who missed out in the end. And I'm not sorry, I'm afraid to say, to see the back end of Boris. Now, I know your viewers are hugely and ferociously supportive of Boris, so I shall get into trouble for saying that.
Well, no, well, explain to us why... I mean, Francis, you're clearly a very intelligent man. Explain to us what it was about Boris, with his universal appeal. I mean, you know, as a charismatic sort of leader, which he certainly was, at the end of the day, what was it about him that didn't sit well with you, that makes you pleased that he actually withdrew yesterday or Sunday?
No, I totally agree, Stephen. We shouldn't just write him off. Very charismatic man. But I'm afraid it was that acquaintance with the truth, shall we say, that led me to really worry about what he was saying. He seemed to be able to say two things to different people to get them on side, which, okay, may be a politician's way of doing business. But to be honest, as a businessman of many years standing, etc., I don't buy that. And I think we've got to wait for the parliamentary inquiry, which I hope doesn't turn into a witch hunt. It could well do, because Labour want some sort of revenge. But, you know, let's give him credit where credit is due. He did great things. You know, to be landed with a pandemic was not easy for anybody. I think he got overtaken by the medical people as to lockdown, etc. Sunak, to his credit, came back from America to ward off the last lockdown over Christmas. And I think we've just got to move on from Boris, but remember him fondly. I'm sure if he's really minded to support the Conservative Party, he will be out there campaigning for us. and that would be fantastic. He's the most incredible campaigner, but he didn't have the attention to detail, the attention span, unfortunately, to really get a grip of running a government. And I'm sure that's incredibly hard, and I wouldn't like to have to do that job. But it seemed to me that, even if he'd had in number 10 a simple thing as a Gantt chart, they could have done a whole lot better in meeting objectives.
Well,
but you've got to delegate, and delegation means you also have to make tough judgments about people.
Well, I'll
think
tell you
Boris
what,
was too nice.
there's going to be some tough judgments ahead for Prime Minister Sunak, as you alluded to earlier on, that's for sure. But Francis, it's really lovely to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
And you.
And particularly just to hear some real optimism, because Francis, as a member of the Conservative Party, for him, it's really gone the right way, because Francis supported Rishi Sunak in the previous leadership election, which, of course, Rishi Sunak lost out to. The complication for Rishi Sunak is uniting a party, members who didn't vote for him initially in the last vote, and then the public at whole. But he's made his message very clear, to Conservative MPs at least, unite or die. So we'll see how he gets away.
Who was it yesterday saying to us, what unites Conservatives is strength. If things start heading in the right direction, they will fall in behind him. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for all of us. And actually, I think even if there was a general election and Labour got in, it's still financially, fiscally going to be very tough for everyone with just the way things are at the moment. So we shall just have to wait and see, won't we?
Coming up to 20 minutes past 6 now. Let's bring you up to date with the other stories making the news today. And the Irish musician Bob Geldof has said he backs the climate change protesters who threw soup over Van Gogh's sunflowers. Two Just Stop Oil activists threw tomato soup at the painting at the National Gallery on the 14th of October. Well, Sir Geldof said they're not killing anyone. Climate change will.
Police will now have to consider the views of domestic abuse and sexual assault victims before releasing suspects from custody. New bail reforms will see officers told to only release them under investigation where it's necessary and proportionate. The changes to the rules will be introduced this week.
The US actor and comedian Leslie Jordan, known for his role as Beverly Leslie in the TV series Will and Grace, has died. Jordan was reportedly involved in a car accident, crashing his car into a building. Well, the Emmy Award-winning actor was 67.
I feel really sorry about Leslie Jordan, or Beverly Leslie, as I will always remember him from Will and Grace. I'm surprised he was only 67. He seemed a lot older in a way. But he was, from all accounts, a charming individual. And what he did do during lockdown was he took to Instagram and did a lot of these Instagram stories and things, which became hugely popular, and he just kept people entertained.
It's just that sort of wry charisma.
Yeah, he was a proper entertainer.
It's true.
If you like. So it's a real shame about that, actually. Just 67. Oh, what's your favourite music? I'd love to know. gbviews@gbnews.uk, because there's a survey out. It's in the Mirror, actually, this morning. The best decade for music, it says, the 80s. Couldn't agree more.
I think 80s were the greaties. That's the headline in the Mirror. I'm unsurprisingly, more of a 90s girl, it has to be said.
Yeah.
You do really love the music of the era that you grew up in, of course.
Yeah, I get. But it's things like, as they mention here, Madonna, when she was getting into the groove and all that sort of thing, which was really sort of good. Queen, who actually been voted the best group of the 70s and the 80s. I mean, Queen were really in their heyday in the 80s. Michael Jackson, Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer, all that sort of thing. George Michael.
And, well, the analysis of this reporter is that today's top acts, like Ed Sheeran and Justin Bieber, don't have the same appeal, making the current decade the worst, according to this survey. Is that right? Which was the best decade? So you would firmly say the 80s?
80s. There was just something about it. It was a totally new sound, new instruments involved, you know, and whether you like your George Michael stuff and your Wham and all that, whatever, or whether you're into your Stock Aitken and Waterman and your Kylie and Sunita and all that sort of stuff, which was huge in the late 80s as well. There was something for everyone, I think. Tiffany. Oh, a bit of Tiffany.
Well, apparently the 80s also scored highest for the best for film. So,
Right.
you know, apparently the 80s was a real riot for entertainment all round. Yeah. Maybe we're just having too much of the same music now coming out. The charts dominated by songs that don't sound that different from each other. Well, let us know what you think. And we've got more sort of music and entertainment to come.
Alison Moyet, I'm just thinking of.
Oh.
Alison Moyet. Now, what a cracking voice Alison Moyet's got.
I know this is really awful and cliche, but I just love the Spice Girls, so... I even had a Spice Girls colouring in book at school, which everyone was very jealous of. And in wet play, everyone would want to come and do colouring in with me.
There you go. It's just the fact you were at school when the Spice Girls were huge.
That's true.
You're very, very old.
Well, after the break, showbiz reporter Ellie Phillips will be sharing her highlights from last night's Pride of Britain Awards. Don't miss it.
Good morning, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. Tuesday is going to be a bright day. There'll be plenty of sunny spells, but there will be some scattered showers and exceptionally mild for the time of year once more. Looking at the pressure pattern, low pressure continues to dominate over the next few days. Showers or longer spells of rain, particularly in the west, accompanied by some strong winds. Further east, be drier at times with some sunny spells. Through Tuesday itself, well, the morning is looking largely dry. There'll be some bright or sunny spells. There will be a few showers from the word go, but most places will stay dry as the morning progresses. A few more popping up across southern England into the afternoon. And then later on, we'll see a band of heavier rain, stronger winds moving in across parts of Devon and Cornwall. Winds coming in from the south, so a mild direction, 14 to 19 Celsius across the UK, well above average for this time of the year. Through into the evening, outbreaks of rain continue to push northwards through the Irish Sea, affecting parts of Wales. Then later on, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland into the early hours. But clouding over across much of the UK, the winds picking up, starting to gust near gale force towards the Irish Sea. And as a result, it will be a mild night, 13, 14, 15 Celsius for many of us, well above where they should be. Bit of a cloudy, windy start to Wednesday morning, but as the morning progresses, we'll start to see some brighter skies developing. Showers will push their way quickly north and eastwards, most persistent across northern parts of Scotland, some heavy rain for a time here. But into the afternoon, plenty of sunny spells developing, a few heavy showers and staying quite blustery, but temperatures rising in the best of the sunshine, 20, 21 Celsius, well above where they should be. Feeling warm for the next few days as well. We will see some rain at times, particularly in the west, the best of the sunshine in the east with some blustery winds, and those temperatures 19, 20, 21 Celsius over the next few days.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to the programme. It's coming up to 6:30. Still to come on the programme, as Kim Kardashian breaks her silence on her ex-husband's anti-Semitism scandal, we'll ask what's next for the controversial rapper, formerly known as Kanye West.
7:45. How about a nice bowl of bugs for breakfast? As one supermarket considers selling insect-laced meals, we're going to be conducting our very own taste test to see if it's worth considering.
We're both going to be doing that, aren't we, Stephen?
No. I'm not. I've got the excuse of being vegetarian, so I'm not eating bugs.
Sigh.
Nothing with a face. Nothing with a face.
Well, get in touch as well this morning. Of course, we're going to have a new Prime Minister by the end of the day. Formally, leader of the Conservative Party already, Rishi Sunak, will be appointed by the King a little later on. So what do you make of our next Prime Minister? GBviews at gbnews.uk or drop us a tweet at GB News.
Now, a host of famous faces walked the red carpet last night because it was the Pride of Britain Awards.
Now, the event recognises the unsung heroes of the UK who were nominated by members of the public.
Well, let's talk to showbiz reporter Ellie Phillips, who was there late into the night and is here very early in the morning. Good to see you, Ellie. There was amazing people who were nominated and who won prizes in this last night. I know it's being broadcast later in the week, isn't it? But, the incredible celebrities on the red carpet as well.
Yeah, this is a night where stars really turn out because they want to pay tribute to these real-life heroes. And, there are 12 categories. We already know the winners. They've been drip-fed through the past couple of weeks. And like you said, the ceremony will be aired on Thursday at 8 o'clock on ITV. But last night was the big ceremony. Stars packed the red carpet, and they always are willing to talk more about issues that really matter to them, causes that mean a lot to them, and so it's a really good time to chat to them because they want to raise awareness for the people there and they want to use their celebrity to draw attention to what really matters. So, yeah, it's really good. And I managed to get quite a lot of chats in.
Good.
No surprise. No surprise, grabbed everyone. And one person I spoke to was co-host of the evening, Carol Vorderman, and I asked her why the night is so important to her.
I think with all of the news, as we all know, which hasn't been good and isn't going to be good in the future, that we meet some real heroes who are not into what they do for anything, for themselves, that it's always for the betterment of other people. So it's a good spirit.
Yeah. Carol always gets involved in this, doesn't she?
She's hosted it since its inception. And actually, when it first started, there was a mix of awards for politicians and some celebrities, and she turned around afterwards and said, no, it's the people that matter, the real everyday people that do things that are exceptional, and that was what last night was about. And this is the second year that she's co-hosted it with Ashley Banjo from Diversity.
Do you know what? I love Ashley. I've had him on programmes several times over the years. What a lovely fella here.
So lovely and so warm and so delighted to be back again co-hosting it with him. And as I said before, the night draws attention to a lot of worthy causes. So when I chatted to him on the carpet, I asked him which causes were most important to him.
What's interesting about tonight? You think you know what's important to you, you think you know if you've got things that are hard, and then you turn up on a night like tonight, you learn the stories and you go, do you know what? Whatever's hard for me, whatever might feel important in the moment, there are so many important things and there are so many incredible people. So, that's one of the reasons I just genuinely love tonight. It's a real, humbling, eye-opening experience, 100%.
It often is eye-opening. I know you've spoken to people who've gone through some real trauma over the last few years. Tell us your conversation with Kelsey Parker.
So, Kelsey Parker, for those who don't know, is the wife of the late singer Tom Parker, who was in The Wanted. He died in March, aged 33, of an inoperable brain tumour. She has, the whole way through and now, been a campaigner to raise awareness for people with brain tumours and for funding and research. And so it was really heartbreaking for her last night because she was actually there at Pride of Britain last year with him on the red carpet. So this is her first year being there without him. But she stayed strong. And I actually asked her what the future holds for her as a campaigner for those with brain tumours.
I'm working on something at the moment, so I'm doing a 6-part series. But for me, I just want to raise as much awareness for brain tumours because they get 1% of funding and the standard of care hasn't been changed in 30 years. There's so much to be done, and I feel like Tom sort of handed me over the baton to continue the legacy because there's so much more that I can actually do and so many people that I can help. And even now with grief, like I'm going through a whole grief journey, like there's so much that I can do to help people.
It's so difficult, isn't it? I'd forgotten he was only 33.
Yeah, with 2 young children as well. So really, really difficult time for her. But it's amazing that, you know, she went last night and I said to her, you know, obviously it's difficult, but seeing other people do inspirational things, does that kind of spur you on to do more? And she was like, absolutely. I'm so here to kind of feel that everyone goes through really bad things and actually you can make something good out of them. So it was a really, really positive chat with her. It was lovely to see her. Someone else I spoke to, who people will know has been through a lot recently, is Sir Mo Farah. So he had his documentary out recently, which was called The Real Mo Farah, where he revealed that he'd been illegally trafficked from Somali as a child. We love him. He's one of our icons. He's a British Olympian. But he's actually quite a shy guy. So I asked him how hard it was for him to open up and be vulnerable for the documentary.
Yeah, it was hard, honestly, but you know what inspired me is my kids and my family who helped me discover my journey, and honestly, for many, many years I always wanted answers. I'm still looking for answers, but again, it's sharing that and without the support of the public and people.
He was. He took actually quite a big gamble doing what he did. You know, and the fact that we're still calling him Mo Farah when we now know that isn't his name.
Exactly.
It's just a remarkable story.
And he was really wonderful to chat to on the carpet, really humble, really wanted to raise attention to not just what he's been through. And he said, you know, it's not just me. So many people have actually been through this, and it's just good that I can raise awareness as the whole night raises awareness for really key issues.
Yeah, lovely. Ellie, thank you very much indeed. We're going to be meeting one of the winners a little bit later on.
Right now, 25 minutes to 7. Don't go anywhere. After the break, we're going through the papers with Stephanie Tecci and Martin Daubney. Don't miss it.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB Newsday with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB Newsday and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
6:37, morning to you. Let's bring you up to date with some of the headlines today. And Rishi Sunak will be appointed as the new Prime Minister by King Charles at some point this afternoon, we think, and will look to unite the Tory party as he builds a new cabinet. He won the Tory leadership contest after Penny Mordaunt and Boris Johnson dropped out.
Well, some Conservative Party supporters have cancelled their memberships following Rishi Sunak's victory in the contest. Well, members expressed frustration over Mr Sunak's victory, some saying the move has left them fuming that members weren't able to vote for him to take over from Liz Truss.
And about 25% of the sun is going to be blocked by the moon this morning as it passes between it and the Earth. People across the UK will be able to see the phenomenon, with sky gazers in northern Scotland expected to have the best views. It should start just after 10 o'clock and come to an end just before noon.
And
with an eclipse by that, we've got an expert on it.
We do.
But the thing with an eclipse like that is, unless you actually look at it through the right gear, you won't be able to tell the difference. You can't tell.
We've really dampened down the excitement for that.
Well, it's true. Even when there is a full solar, the sun is so bright that even when there is a full solar eclipse, it's only when about 98% of the sun has gone that the skies actually start to darken.
It's only going to be a 25% coverage today.
You're not going to notice it.
It might be more exciting than that. We'll find out in a little bit, because we will have someone to tell you how you can see the best of it if you are interested. In the meantime, though, now, time to go through the papers. Joining us in the studio is showbiz reporter Stephanie Tecci and journalist and former Brexit MEP Martin Daubney. Very good morning to both of you. Let's start, of course, with the new Prime Minister, new leader of the Conservative Party, Rishi Sunak. Sunak comes to power in the Guardian. Unite or die was that very stark warning that Sunak gave to the party.
Yeah, and I think he's right. And I think, sadly for him, it's the die option. And I think we need to do that. And I'll tell you why. 7 weeks ago, he was put forward as the leader of the party, and the membership unanimously said they were not ready for Rishi. This time...
They didn't unanimously say.
Well, he got nowhere near power because the membership didn't want him. And he was the worst. He was the worst of two options. They didn't want Truss either. They wanted somebody else. They didn't get them. And now there's been a carve-up of power behind the scenes, reminiscent of the sort of stuff I used to see in the European Union, where Penny Mordaunt mysteriously drops out.
Well, she didn't get enough backers.
No,
she didn't get enough backers, and actually, Boris didn't get enough backers. So...
Yeah, but that's a separate story. The fact of the matter is, he's been anointed by Tory MPs, gone nowhere near an election. It's a disgrace, and I'm afraid he's not the solution, particularly for the Red Wall, like where I campaigned. I was speaking to Red Wall MPs, Conservatives, yesterday, who are furious about this because they're staring down the barrel of a P45 because Rishi will not unite the party. He will not unite the country.
Why not? Because that's the situation up until now. This is what he inherits today. There's a case that he's saying we've got to get together. Why do you think that's impossible?
Because he represents a wing of the party that doesn't represent parts of the country. I mean, for example, in the Midlands and in the North, the Brexit heartlands, they voted for a Brexit mandate. They wanted Boris Johnson. They haven't got him anymore.
Martin, you can't deny that Rishi's the best man to deliver on economics, and this is what we need right now.
Well, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because here's a guy that printed £70 billion worth of money during the pandemic. He's the guy that's basically caused inflation. If you print money, you cause inflation, and now he's seen as the economic saviour. I find that bizarre. I don't think the Tories have got a hope, and I think we need a general election. And I'm hearing from people all the time who are jumping ship, they're tearing up their membership of the Conservative Party, they're going to reform, parties like that.
But what he's also doing is appealing more through the at a time when economic stability is the key. Even for those people in Red Wall seats, where it's actually probably more of a key to places like richer parts of London and all the rest of it. Economic stability is going to be the crucial way forward.
Yeah, but how's he going to do that? I mean, if you want to put money in people's pockets through tax cuts, you said he can't do that.
No.
Liz Truss did that and it's been kicked out.
But he's going to try and bring down inflation, isn't he? I mean, that's the key. Well, I don't know. I'm not an economist.
but maybe...
But he is.
Maybe nobody can sort this mess out. Maybe the economy is too far gone, and maybe let's just give us a general election, give it to Labour and let them screw it.
But I think the bigger picture at hand is we need stability as a country, and we haven't had that for a long time. So I just think bringing a general election is going to cause more instability and more mayhem, and we're not actually fixing the problems at hand.
See, what I'm intrigued... I've got to say... Martin, I'm intrigued by the fact that if there was a general election, you know and I know Labour would get in at the moment.
They would.
Are you saying you've got more faith in Labour's economic policies than you have in Tories? Well, in that case, why do you want them in?
Well, that's like saying, do you want to be hung or do you want to be shot? But that's where we're at. They're both terrible options. The Labour Party would be terrible for Britain. Undeniably.
So why do you want them in?
I don't want them in.
Let
the people decide. That's democracy.
Yes, but there
isn't going to be a general election, though, is there? Unless the Conservatives call for it. So, based on the situation, exactly. So, based on the situation that we are in, what do you want?
Well, I want a general election.
OK, we know that's not going to happen.
And so do the people. Let the people decide, and that's the point. The people didn't decide. Parliamentarians decided, and it's a carve-up.
This is a time for a different tack, though, isn't it?
It's not a carve-up.
It is.
How is it a carve-up when there's a ballot? Right, and if you don't go on the ballot, if the only one person goes on the ballot, they win.
Yeah, and that's a carve-up.
It's not a carve-up.
It is.
Because nobody else hit the required number of supporters.
It's the opposite of democracy to have one candidate on a ballot sheet. That's what we saw in North Korea. It's what we saw in the European Union when Ursula von der Leyen got in, and it's what we saw yesterday.
If Boris has got 100 votes, he would have been on that ballot because he knows it would have gone to the membership, and he would have.
But the amount of shenanigans that go on behind the scenes to lean on people to vote or to pull out. You know what it's like in politics, Stephen. Come on. Well, this is a carve-up.
Shall we look at where Sunak might live? Stephanie, you've got the details on where the former Chancellor, now Prime Minister, may reside.
On a lighter note, so when Rishi was Chancellor, he moved to a townhouse in Kensington, which is worth £6.6 million. So now there's reports in Express Online that actually he might become the first Prime Minister to shun living at number 10 and live in this townhouse and split his time between his flat at number 10 and this townhouse. So the reason why he moved there, people were saying it was because of, all the media attention due to his wife's non-dom status, which she's now relinquished. But he actually said he just wanted his daughter to be able to walk from school every day by herself, back and forth. And actually, I do think it'll be refreshing for him to probably shun living at number 10 because, as we saw with Boris and Kerry, there was all this big drama about how much she was spending on furniture, and I think a similar thing could happen to Rishi's wife.
But I guess with all of this, though, I mean, the argument of saying, well, I want my daughter to just be able to walk home from school ain't going to happen now.
No, not at all. But I think this is where this morning the Rishis are probably waking up and his family are realising that their whole family dynamic is going to change and they're now going to be in the spotlight and every move that they do will be up for criticism.
Yeah. Well, it'd be quite nice in a way that number 10 is just used as an office rather than...
Larry the cat can have more power there.
Well, yeah, quite well, yes, and not necessarily a bad thing. This is a multicultural triumph, though, Martin, according to the Times.
Yeah. Am I the only person who does not care a jot about what nationality or ethnicity the Prime Minister is?
No, you're not.
I really don't care. And why are people caring? It's being called the Obama moment. But what's been really interesting about this is the fact the Labour Party are not happy about the fact Rishi is in as Prime Minister because they're saying, so Nadia Whittam from Nottingham, my home city, Rishi isn't a win for Asian representation because he's worth £730 million, twice the amount of money of the King. And that might explain why number 10 Downing Street is too shabby for him. So it's basically he's too wealthy, therefore he's the wrong type of Asian person, just like Rupert Hook said basically that Kwasi Kwarteng was only superficially black. So it seems that the obsession with race is coming from the so-called anti-racists who are actually the racists.
Go on, then.
I just get really tired of all these stereotypes of what black people are supposed to be or what Asian people are supposed to be. Yeah. Especially, it's just like, let's forget their skin colour because to us as ethnics, it's really irrelevant. It's a matter about who can do the job properly. And I think it's nice that we've got the first Asian Prime Minister, but the big question at hand is he going to be the one that's going to be able to do the job properly? And I think all this hype around skin colour, it just shows how far removed we are as a society, that we haven't really progressed in equality.
But the rest, I mean, whilst the rest of us, and I'm a bit like Martin in that I hadn't even really thought of it,
Yeah.
to be honest. But for those communities, I mean, if there was a black Prime Minister, doesn't that bolster a community, in a sense?
It does bolster community because it's quite aspirational and inspirational when you can see someone of a likened colour, you know, in that same job. But it's like with Kwasi Kwarteng. Everyone was celebrating having the first black chancellor, and then within a few weeks, he's out.
Yeah.
So it actually becomes a mockery for the, you know, for the community. So now I think, you know, we have to look beyond the skin colour.
Yeah.
And talk about the process by which these people become Prime Minister. Front page of the Mirror. Rishi's got no mandate.
Well, it's a typical left-wing agenda. You know, they're saying that, you know, this has not been a democratic process, that, you know, Rishi has come into power without a single vote from the public, and we still don't know what his mandate is. But I feel like we had about 6 weeks of hustings where he was able to put that mandate across. He's not just come out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. That's a very fair point. We do know, I mean, I know the economic situation has changed, so his plans will have to adapt. But we know basically what he stands for, don't we?
Definitely. And I think, you know, the people calling for a general election, you know, for Boris to pull out and Penny to pull out, they've realised there's a bigger picture at hand here. It's not about egos. It's a matter of uniting this country and getting the job done. And I think for Labour as well, calling for a general election, I don't know if they're even ready to take on half of the country's problems.
Well, I mean, back to my earlier point, I mean, I do think it's been a carver, but I'm going to stick by that point, Stephen, even though you're looking at me sternly.
I am looking at you sternly.
I'm afraid I do believe that. And as for, you know, him being this kind of magic answer to the country's woes, I mean, here's a guy that printed endless money. He's a high-tax Conservative. He feels like a socialist. Big state, high tax, here's loads of free money. Well, that's Corbynomics.
But he doesn't want to be... I mean, he's said quite clearly he doesn't want to be a high-tax Conservative, but that's where we are at the moment.
Yeah, because he gave away 70 billion. And so you have to tax... That's not free money. That's government... They print money that you and I, all of us, have to pay back, and that's where we're at. And that was Rishi's decision. So the fact he's being painted as a saviour, he's saving his own mess.
Well, I mean, look, he said at the time that's going to have to be paid back. I mean, and we can't... The thing is with this, and we've got to be careful, because admittedly it adds to the situation, right? But this we are not where we are because of the, you know, the handouts, the furlough and the dine out to eat out or whatever it was, you know.
Well, it's a huge part of it.
It's not a huge part. When you look at the economic situation globally, it's not a huge part. It's maybe a contributory factor, but it's not left us where we are now.
Well, if you print endless money, then you cause soaring inflation. It has to be paid back. It's the magic money tree. There's a payback time. Of course, no, the additional cost of energy prices, no conflicts, but that's also because of poor planning. You know, we should be energy sovereign.
The Bank of England should have started to tackle inflation months and months and months ago, which it didn't.
Yeah, that is true, but don't forget, he was the Chancellor at the time when all this happened. And as for, you know, soaring energy prices, that's because this government and Rishi is going to be tied into this net zero madness. So we can't utilise our own resources, shale gas, even coal. You know, we are still importing tons and tons and tons of coal from around the world to power fire stations that have to be switched on when the wind drops. And yet they're tied to net zero. That's a part of the problem because they don't have a forward-thinking energy process.
Martin, thank you very much for your impassioned pleas this morning. Stephanie as well, appreciate your time. You'll both be back in about 40 minutes' time to rifle through the papers. And maybe we'll move on from a little bit of politics, even though, of course, that is really top of the agenda today. But right now it's just gone 10 to 7 here on Breakfast.
Now, Kim Kardashian has spoken out in the wake of her ex-husband's anti-Semitic remarks, saying hate speech is never excusable.
Well, the rapper, formerly known as Kanye West, now known as Ye, has been criticised for his hateful remarks about Jewish people, including the accusation that they control the media and other industries.
Well, let's talk to showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield, who joins us now. Kinsey, morning to you. So what has Kim Kardashian had to say about all of this?
Yes. Well, first of all, I should say she finally made these comments, made these statements on social media after a botched birthday party to Vegas that she documented, and after having dinner with Ivanka Trump. Some people overheard her talking about how she thinks she needs to address this. So you see it on the screen there, hate speech is never okay or excusable. I stand here. Let me grab this on my phone. I stand together with the Jewish community and call on the terrible violence and hateful rhetoric towards them to come to an immediate end. And so, I feel like maybe she should have done this sooner because it looked poor and it didn't look as sincere as it should have coming after her big Vegas, birthday bash. She attempted to get to Vegas. She ended up at In-N-Out Burger here in the States. And then overheard with Ivanka Trump making the comment that she thinks she needs to finally step up and say something. She also made these comments after Khloe Kardashian made a statement too that was very well received. Kanye West dropped by some of his fashion partners, he had recently signed with Johnny Depp's attorneys. They dropped him because he refused to apologize. So, Kanye's really getting hit left and right. I think it was right for Kim to finally step up and distance herself from the drama.
Why does Kanye get so much space and so much airtime? When does that sort of obsession with everything he says and wears, when does that stop?
That's a great question, because every time I turn on the television, I'm wondering why people are giving him that opportunity. Tucker Carlson did the interview with him. We had somebody named Chris Cuomo here who has a television show on a cable network who did a show with him. So people continue to put a mic in his face. Everybody that does it tries to hold him accountable, tries to get him to step back and apologize, and he refuses to. I've said this before. I do think this is an issue that involves mental health, and so I do think that we have to be careful about talking about it, and I'm sure they need to be careful with handling him. I just hope and pray that somebody steps in and does it soon, because his rhetoric is dangerous.
Can we talk about... Well, I'll always refer to him as Beverly Leslie Jordan, who's died at the age of 67.
Isn't it heartbreaking? And I love that you refer to him as that. That is so sweet. One of my favorite characters. We know him well from Will and Grace, also from American Horror Story. And let's not forget that he became an internet sensation during the pandemic. He was such joy to follow, so silly, so humorous. And we are so heartbroken by this. They believe it was a medical emergency that led to his car crashing, his BMW. And he died earlier today. It's still Monday over here in Los Angeles, and the entertainment world is absolutely devastated over it.
Yeah, it's a real shocker. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Kinsey. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. Just seem a real... I mean, I know some people will say, well, I didn't watch Will and Grace. I'm not familiar with him. He was just fun. He was fun. He was extremely camp. But if you're old enough, just think sort of Larry Grayson-y type sort of camp humour and outrageous, really. But just seemed like a really nice fella, really. And it's just a real shame. Real shame.
Don't go anywhere. We've got lots more to come here, especially more on the really big story of the day, the new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. We're bringing you figures as well from the ONS that reveal the scale of the cost of living crisis. That's all to come after the weather.
Good morning, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. Tuesday is going to be a bright day. There'll be plenty of sunny spells, but there will be some scattered showers and exceptionally mild for the time of year once more. Looking at the pressure pattern, low pressure continues to dominate over the next few days. Showers or longer spells of rain, particularly in the west, accompanied by some strong winds. Further east, be drier at times with some sunny spells. Through Tuesday itself, the morning is looking largely dry. There'll be some bright or sunny spells. There will be a few showers from the word go, but most places will stay dry as the morning progresses. A few more popping up across southern England into the afternoon. And then later on, we'll see a band of heavier rain, stronger winds moving in across parts of Devon and Cornwall. Winds coming in from the south, so a mild direction, 14 to 19 Celsius across the UK, well above average for this time of the year. Through into the evening, outbreaks of rain continue to push northwards through the Irish Sea, affecting parts of Wales. Then later on, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland into the early hours. But clouding over across much of the UK, the winds picking up, starting to gust near gale force towards the Irish Sea. And as a result, it will be a mild night, 13, 14, 15 Celsius for many of us, well above where they should be. Bit of a cloudy, windy start to Wednesday morning, but as the morning progresses, we'll start to see some brighter skies developing. Showers will push their way quickly north and eastwards. Most persistent across northern parts of Scotland, some heavy rain for a time here. But into the afternoon, plenty of sunny spells developing, a few heavy showers and staying quite blustery, but temperatures rising in the best of the sunshine, 20, 21 Celsius, well above where they should be. Feeling warm for the next few days as well. We will see some rain at times, particularly in the west, the best of the sunshine in the east with some blustery winds, and those temperatures 19, 20, 21 Celsius over the next few days.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Rishi Sunak tells the Conservatives to unite or die as he prepares to take over as Prime Minister.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock. It's Tuesday, the 25th of October. Already, where's this month going? This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Rosie.
Right, well, here's what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak will take over as Prime Minister today after a meeting with the King. In an address to Conservatives behind closed doors, he called for unity within the party as he prepares to name his new cabinet.
Well, the outgoing Prime Minister, Liz Truss, will leave Downing Street later this morning after a farewell statement outside number 10.
Well, new figures are going to be released today by the Office for National Statistics, showing how the UK's groceries have been affected by the cost of living.
And how do you fancy a bowl full of bugs?
How do you fancy it, Stephen?
No, I'm not having any. Anyway, as one leading supermarket considers selling insect-based meals, they are actually very nutritious. We'll be asking if this is the future. And here in the studio, we'll do our very own lovely, lovely taste test. Lovely.
As always.
Lovely.
I'm
very
You're not eating
I'm
it.
very enthusiastic about this taste test because I'm not going to do it.
I am genuinely intrigued because the argument put forward is this is cleaner, it's better for the environment, you still get a packed load of protein. Yeah. The only thing I'm a little bit less keen on is apparently we're tasting it in chili con carne form.
Oh, but you can't mind about that. Chili
I don't really want chili con carne sort of at 7 o'clock in the morning. But that, anyway, we'll see.
Like lasagna, cold the next morning. Spot on.
Not in the morning, maybe for lunch. Not sure about that. Well, if you've got views on anything that isn't food you'd like to eat cold the next morning, maybe your hot take on the latest Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So let's kick off, should we, with the new leader of the Conservative Party, Rishi Sunak, who will meet King Charles this morning, where he will then become Britain's new Prime Minister.
Well, it's after he addressed the country yesterday.
It is the greatest privilege of my life to be able to serve the party I love and give back to the country I owe so much to. The United Kingdom is a great country, but there is no doubt we face a profound economic challenge. We now need stability and unity, and I will make it my utmost priority to bring our party and our country together.
Well, that call for unity was quite profound. It's front page of most of the papers. Sunak tells the Tories, unite or die. Despite that call, some Conservative Party supporters have started cancelling their memberships following Rishi's victory.
Well, we've been getting reaction from across the country, and here's what people in Rishi Sunak's constituency, that's Richmond in Yorkshire, have had to say.
Well, he's been good as far as a local MP goes. I mean, the times that I've had any problems, they've been sorted pretty fast. We'll have to wait and see what Prime Minister's going to be like.
Brilliant. He's an excellent constituency MP, always has been, works hard, very nice person. I think he's sensible, clever. I think he'll make a really good PM.
Nice bloke. They just need to know what the public want, don't they? Bring everything down, back down to where it should be.
Well, we've also been out in Birmingham asking locals there for their thoughts.
He's part of the party that all the scandals was with, so I don't see why he should be in charge. It's the same group as Boris, really, so I think it's a pure joke.
It's best of a bad job, I think, to be quite honest. I don't know, I'd rather they weren't in power, but after the last lot, it's just been ridiculous.
Boris, I think he did well, overwhelmed by Partygate and everything, just in a bad state at the moment, so...
Well, let's talk to the Deputy Editor of CapEx, Alice Denby, who's here. Good to see you this morning. What struck me from all of that, I know we get loads and loads of views from viewers and listeners who are angry about this, who are very, very pro-Boris, right? I understand that. But what struck me is that lady from his constituency saying he's sensible and he's clever. And isn't that what we're looking for at the moment?
Absolutely. I think we're looking for stability and competence. But as Rishi Sunak himself said, this is an existential moment for the Conservative Party. If you look at the polls at the moment, when you're talking about eating bugs, I think a lot of people think at the moment that voting Conservative is essentially the equivalent. The party has been mired in turmoil and crisis. It really needs someone stable and competent to bring it together and to just, steady the ship for the next 2 years until the next general election.
And, the opposition, we've heard strong pleas this morning on this programme to say we need a general election. He's not going to do that, is he? And the party don't want that. Do you think they can pull it together to be in a more credible place when that time does come?
I think it's been very clear over the past couple of years that the party under Boris Johnson and under Liz Truss was incapable of governing. It couldn't come together, they couldn't get anything through, they couldn't get anything done because of all of these self-imposed crises. I think under Rishi Sunak, they have a much better shot of actually coming together and getting on with the job, at least for a bit. It's going to be a real challenge for Rishi Sunak to turn those polls around. But I think if anyone can do it, let's hope it's him.
See, that, and what I'm intrigued by, and it's just struck me as we've been talking in the last couple of minutes, is that we're talking about the party. The focus has to be the country, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I realised just then I said let's hope. I meant let's hope for the country, not for the party. And yes, you're absolutely right. The party needs to stop fighting with itself. It needs to stop talking about itself. And it needs to stop doing stupid things.
Because we are whatever people think about who is leader, we are in the pretty unprecedented times at the moment, and so whoever was in power, whichever leader or whichever party, we're right up against it at the moment. We've got to start pulling a few things out the hat, haven't we? Even if it's going to be hard.
Yeah, we are certainly facing an immediate cost of living crisis and an enormous black hole in the country's finances. We think it's about 40 billion. We don't know how to pay for it. It's either going to have to be tax rises or spending cuts, and those are going to have to be deeper than they would have been had it not been for Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget. So whoever's going to be Chancellor is going to have a really difficult job, and we'll see who that is. We're expecting a reshuffle or a reshuffle today.
Don't.
We think there'll be more details across the morning, actually, of who might be in that cabinet. One of the real criticisms of Liz Truss was that she surrounded herself with her allies. Do you think Rishi Sunak is going to do that or learn from her mistake?
I think he's absolutely going to learn from mistakes. You saw him talk about unity. I think he's going to reach out to all wings of the party. I think he's unlikely to move people like Jeremy Hunt, who has, clearly been a stabilising force. We'll see if he brings back people like Michael Gove. I mean, will he even offer Boris Johnson and Liz Truss jobs? Who knows? But I think it might be a more modest reshuffle than we expect, because I think he might keep quite a few of Liz Truss's people in place, just kind of.
We should know quite quickly, shouldn't we? I mean, within a couple of weeks, we've got the next budget, and they're calling it a proper budget on the 31st now. We should know quite quickly what the markets make of all of this, which gives us a very clear indication as to whether things are going to start to stabilise.
Yeah, I think it was George Osborne who said recently the markets don't wait to have a vote.
Yeah.
We've already seen them rally a bit with the news of this new Prime Minister. I think, he's very much seen by the markets as someone who's competent, who's kind of on their side. So, yes, we shall see. I mean, we're already seeing a more positive picture. Indeed, also the price of gas has been falling, which helps a lot in making the energy price cap cheaper. So hopefully a more positive picture going forward.
Do you think going forward as well, because, I mean, the price cap was... The 2-year guarantee on that price cap was seen as a bit of sticking a couple of fingers up at Putin. Actually, wasn't it? And perhaps seen as slightly sign of weakness towards Russia, that it's been reduced now to 6 months, and then looking at it again. But when that does get refocused on, that help and other help is going to have to become much more targeted, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The advantage of having the 2-year price cap was that it really did give people certainty. The disadvantage, of course, is that it was, as you say, so untargeted that this is going to rich people as well as to poor people. This is going to rich people who have, swimming pools and hot tubs to heat. And I don't think it's really credible in a time of a cost of living crisis and straitened economic times to be giving universal handouts to the wealthy. I think going forward, it really needs to be focused on the poorest people. The question is how you find a mechanism to do that. It's very difficult to identify exactly what a household's finances are and what they're struggling with.
And what the cost of putting that process in place would be?
I think whatever the cost, we're looking at 40 to 200 billion on the energy price cap, so the cost would be worth it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the interesting thing, isn't it, though, with the 2-year price cap, what you didn't know was how much it actually was, with the changing prices, it could have cost an absolute arm and a leg.
Yeah, it's completely open-ended.
Yeah.
So I think they will definitely be looking at measures come April and targeting it much better. And that's a real kind of knotty political problem. But Rishi Sunak, has got a record of sorting out things like that. Furlough was a successful, well-delivered, smooth scheme.
But Martin Daubney, our paper reviewer, you were sat in the green room, you probably heard it. He was saying that, all of this money printing, in effect, is giving loads of money away during furlough, by Rishi when he was Chancellor, he says is the centre of all these financial problems.
I hate to contradict Martin, but it's the Bank of England that prints money, not the Chancellor. Absolutely, we spent an enormous amount of money during the pandemic, and absolutely, along with constraints in supply chains, that has caused inflation. There's no question about that. As I say, the Bank of England has a share of the blame here. I think to me, it's very odd that people were surprised that we had inflation. It's like, well, we've got a lot of money kicking about and not a lot of goods to buy. So this was a kind of obvious situation. The question is now how you contain it, how you tackle inflation, because inflation is the biggest enemy to household finances there is. It makes everybody poorer. It's the worst thing that can happen in your economy. So you really need to get a grip on it.
Okay, Alice.
Thank you very much.
Really
and
good
actually,
to see you.
in just a few minutes' time, we're going to be looking at what's happening to cost of living. The ONS will release their latest statistics and their figures on the cost of our basic goods in the supermarket, and our reporter will be taking us through it. But let's return our attention to the man who's going to have to deal with inflation, our new Prime Minister.
Yeah, because whatever you think of Rishi Sunak, becoming the country's first Asian Prime Minister is a historic milestone.
Well, our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, has been speaking to members of London's South Asian community to find out how they feel about the new PM.
I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
From the shortest-serving PM in history to one of the shortest-serving male PMs this century.
So many of you say to me, wow, you're even shorter in real life.
He's only 5'6", but achieving the highest office in the land is a big moment.
Let me tell you a story about a young woman almost a lifetime ago.
During the leadership campaign in the summer, we heard a lot about his background.
And the love of her family.
He's also spoken about his experience of racism, telling the BBC in 2019 how he'd experienced the P word while sitting in a fast food restaurant with his family when he was young. It's seared in my memory, he said. It stung in a way that is hard to explain. And that's why the UK's first British Asian and Hindu PM means a lot to worshippers here. This is one of Europe's biggest Hindu temples in Neasden, northwest London. They're celebrating Diwali, the Hindu festival of light, on the day Sunak won the race to be PM.
I think it's a very proud and historic moment for the British Indian community. I think more importantly for the younger generation to take inspiration that, people of all backgrounds, from all ethnicities, can aspire to the highest office. They can engage in public service and be a part of that world. I think that's very significant.
But not everyone from an Asian background thinks the PM's colour is relevant.
It's not about race. It's someone who needs. Our country is, at the moment, our country is, on the downfall.
I think it's actually quite positive for us as British Asians, of course, because it's the first time it's ever happened, and it's opened up doors for us younger generation. So I'm a student here in Birmingham, and I feel like it gives us the opportunity and the inspiration to go after a job like that, knowing that somebody from our background has got that.
At 42 years old, he's also the youngest PM for over 200 years.
Well, when I was a kid, I wanted to be in a Star Wars movie, so that's probably not a sensible thing to do. But I'm a massive football fan. I'm from Southampton, and if I would get to be able to run Southampton football... Oh, wow, is there a Saints fan here? Look at that!
This was 3 years ago when he was Chief Secretary to the Treasury, seeing the latest flick with the then-Chancellor Sajid Javid. The force, however, was with Sunak. A few months later, he became Chancellor and had to borrow record sums of money to support the economy through COVID, dishing out his Eat Out to Help Out scheme to support the hospitality industry. The following April, along with Boris Johnson, he was fined for breaking lockdown rules but refused to resign, choosing instead to step down as Chancellor in July after the PM's handling of Chris Pincher's resignation as Deputy Chief Whip. Sunak's departure triggering the downfall of Boris Johnson's government, something the former PM's supporters have never forgiven him for. But September's loser is October's winner.
I'd like to pay tribute to Liz Truss for her dedicated public service to the country.
Can he unite his party and get inflation down? And does he have the ability to win over voters in the famous Red Wall seats? He'll need all his Jedi mind tricks. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Just make you feel very old when the Prime Minister's younger than you. Mind you, Liz Truss was younger than me. But I
don't know how old Liz Truss was, actually.
She's 46, 47.
46. And Rishi Sunak is
42.
41. 42.
He's 42.
There we go.
Isn't it funny? The Prime Ministers, policemen and doctors are all getting younger. I don't know what's going on.
Do you know, I just can't fathom the pace of change. Now we've sort of gone through the process, you think, OK, right, next Prime Minister. But it has been an extraordinary 6 weeks. It's extraordinary 2 years, 3 years or so. And now Rishi Sunak at the helm telling the party, unite or die. Which do you think will be the result? We're going to look at some of your views in a second, so if you want to contribute, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
I think unite, because I think people... Do you know what? And I know there's a lot of frustration out there, but I think people just want now someone to get on with it. We've got a big problem. Let's just get on with it now.
We've got much more about the new leadership of Rishi Sunak across the programme. But at 17 minutes past 7, let's bring you up to date with the other stories today. And police will now have to consider the views of domestic abuse and sexual assault victims before releasing suspects from custody. It's new bail reforms that will see officers told to only release them under investigation where it's necessary and proportionate. The changes to the rules will be introduced this week.
The Irish musician Bob Geldof has said he backs the climate change protesters who threw soup over Van Gogh's sunflowers. 2 Just Up All activists threw that soup at the painting in the National Gallery earlier this month. Sir Bob said they're not killing anyone, climate change will.
The US actor and comedian Leslie Jordan, known for his roles as Beverly Leslie in the TV series Will and Grace, has died. He was reportedly involved in a car accident, crashing his car. Well, the Emmy Award-winning actor was 67.
Interesting, your thoughts on the new Prime Minister. I'm going to start with one negative one, because there's not... most of them are positive, actually. Paul says Sunak is totally out of touch with the working people that gave them victory in the last election. I lent my vote to Boris, but will not be lending it to Sunak. But do you really think Boris is more in touch? He's a very rich man. I mean, he's going out now earning £300,000 a speech in America. He's a very rich man. Not as rich as Rishi Sunak, but he's very rich. So I'm intrigued, Paul, as to why you think Boris is in touch with ordinary people, but Rishi isn't.
Well, John has one theory on it. I like Rishi. His debating talents and command of detail are second to none, but the red wall belongs to Boris. Without him at the helm, the Tories are done for.
Carol says, I think we have to be positive and give Rishi a chance. He's clever, and that's what we need. It needs a clever man to put this country right. Bob says, I wish the... Yeah, I'm intrigued. Bob says, I wish the new PM all the very best, and I hope for the good of the country he does well. However, I've cancelled my membership of the Conservative Party and will be joining Reform UK. As a Boris Johnson Liz Truss supporter, I cannot continue to support the Conservative Party. I'm just so intrigued by that, really. And what do you think the Reform Party will offer you that the Conservatives under Rishi won't, or that the Conservatives under Liz Truss and Boris Johnson did? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I'm just intrigued. You know, as doing what we do, we cannot get invested in particular parties and all the rest of it in the same way. So people who are members of the party and so passionate about it, I'm just intrigued as to why you think what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Well, Rishi Sunak will be dealing with the economy, the cost of living. New numbers out this morning show that the lowest-priced grocery items have increased in cost by around 17% over the last 12 months.
Yeah, that's an increase of 7% on what we would normally see. The rise in price is similar to the 15% rise in the official measure of inflation for food and drink. Vegetable oil showed the largest percentage increase at 80 pence per litre. Orange juice showed the largest decrease at 6 pence per litre. Let's talk to the finance expert and founder of Macrodisiac, David Bell. David, morning to you. Nice to see you. What do you make of these figures?
Morning, guys, and nice to see you again, Stephen. To be fair, I think they're pretty, they're pretty unexpected. I mean, I can see here that 45% of adults had struggled to pay their energy bills. 30% paying rent or mortgages reported these two sectors being difficult to afford as well. As we've moved into a higher interest rate regime, for example, with mortgages, we've seen some of the mortgage offers that were previously locked in on lower rates be revised and repriced upwards to the higher rates, for example. So people, on a variable rate might be affected. People requiring new mortgages might be more affected as well. Rent, obviously, is shorter-term leases. Landlords would look to up rent as quickly as possible. So I think from that segment, it's pretty evident and was pretty obvious as well. I think the really sad bit, though, is when we come to looking at the disabled adults. 55% of disabled adults reported finding it difficult to afford their energy bills, and around a third found it difficult to afford their rent or mortgage payments. And with the current sort of fiscal policy that's been occurring, where benefits were or weren't going to go up with inflation, that kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Well, it does. With all that, as you say, that we're dealing with, the mortgage rates, the energy bills, the petrol bills, and all the rest of it, people are cutting back as far as they can. If your basic groceries are going up as well, that we keep saying, don't we? It's the final straw. But people have got to be able to afford to buy the absolute basics, and this is almost 20% up is a huge increase.
No, it is, absolutely. I think there does come a time when as you mentioned, it becomes a final straw, and that tends to be when we face a bit of a demand cliff. We start to really see the extent of how far people can no longer be pushed. And that's when we really start to see the economic data, et cetera, deteriorate. I'm looking at stuff at the moment, and it does look pretty bleak across the world. And, a lot of this is due to supply chain issues. A lot of this is due to, what's going on in Ukraine. So there are many external factors here. But of course, there are factors that are due to what's going on here. With the previous interviewee mentioning the Bank of England and the Treasury not printing money, which is kind of false in the most recent context, because all of the Treasury's policies to do with COVID required the Bank of England to print. So she was kind of evading that very, very important point. We didn't have inflation to this extent when the Bank of England would simply do QE, where the money didn't actually go into the economy. But we've got inflation now once the Treasury has actually put that printed money into the economy. So I didn't really think that was very fair when I heard her say that.
OK, well, look, David, we've got to leave it there. Good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. I just think it's a huge worry. But I tell you what, there are the supermarket brands, that are much, and I don't know how they do it. There are some brands in my supermarket that are just so much cheaper than everything else. I don't know how it's done, but I think that's where we've started buying sort of pasta and things, which instead of it costing, £1.10 for a bag, you can get a bag twice as big for 50p. But whether it's as nice or not, I don't know. It's who cares really if it's doing the job? But that's where.
Or if the price is significantly different, and I think it was Tesco talking about the trends they've seen in people shopping, and everybody, they would say it's almost a universal trend. They're just going down a brand or two and saying, actually, I don't need to buy the premium version. That would now seem really indulgent, even if it wasn't before. So let's go for the cheaper alternative. Some of the other problems that food poverty campaigners have been saying is then those foods often on the bottom shelf in the supermarket, because that's where they put those items, are running out of stock because everyone's having to buy those, and they're getting more expensive.
And you do sort of think, if you buy the really cheaper stuff, does that force the other stuff to have to bring the price down? But if they're up against it themselves with their supply chains and travel costs and all the rest of it, maybe they can't bring the price down. So I just don't know.
26 minutes past 7 now. After the break, Paul Coit will be here with all the latest sports stories, including a look ahead to tonight's Champions League action.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, mate.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back to the programme. It is 7:30. Still to come on the programme. Bugs could be coming to a supermarket shelf near you. We're going to be doing a taste test in the studio. We are going to be doing a taste test in about 15 minutes.
It is the 25th of October, so just 2 months until Christmas Day. But could the cost of living crisis be putting our festive lights and displays in jeopardy? Well, perhaps if you're as bright as whoever houses this is. At 8:45, we're getting energy-saving tips from a man who apparently keeps his lights on all year round.
Yeah, that does sound like the two contradict each other. But it is something people are going to have to consider. So, yes, how much might your fairy lights be adding to your energy bill? We've got
They're
more
all
on that.
LEDs now. It could cost hardly anything.
Well, we'll find out from someone who actually has the authority on that information shortly. You can join in any of our discussions. Lots of you getting in touch with your views on Rishi Sunak, the new Prime Minister. He'll be formally put into position a little later on today. gbviews@gbnews.uk. You know the email, or you can tweet us to @GBNews.
Time for all the sport this morning. Paul Coit is here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can we kick off with the hammers?
Yes, we can kick off with the hammers.
Excellent.
Although it was more with the hand than it was with the feet yesterday. I mean, it was really bizarre. So West Ham beat Bournemouth 2-0. And two very controversial goals. The first goal to West Ham, Kurt Zouma scored, and there's a controversial character in himself, but we won't start getting into that. But the ball comes over, and Thilo Kehrer for West Ham. So the ball, and we're talking VAR is involved in this.
Yeah.
So I will try and demonstrate. So as the ball comes over, he's got his hand sort of almost in this position.
Yeah.
The ball bounces up off his wrist and he moves his hands up. It looked like he was playing volleyball, quite frankly.
Yeah.
The ball comes over and then, after a little bobbling around, the ball goes in. So you would look at it and think, it was handball. Yes, it hit his hands. And did it lead to a goal? Yes. But VAR look at it and they say, yeah, but if it wasn't intentional, therefore it shouldn't be given. And it looks incredibly intentional, Stephen. I've got to tell you, it was just like, it looked like someone playing volleyball. So there was that one. So that was given. And then there was a controversial penalty that West Ham got later on. And that was Jordan Zamora. So the ball is crossed over. And again, arms, they call it, whether it's in a natural or unnatural position.
Right.
The volleyball one, apparently, natural position.
Right.
And then the other one with Zamora, as he's sliding in to tackle, his arms are by his side, ball hits his hand, and then a penalty's given. So it's what is natural and what is unnatural.
But that's an unnatural position, having your hands by your side.
Well, it all depends what you're doing, because if you're running in and you're sliding, your arms automatically are probably going to go up. You can't really keep it. And this is why you see these days so many defenders, when the ball comes in, with their hands behind their back, because they're so scared that the ball's going to hit their hand and they're thinking what's going to unwrap. It's just, honestly, it is a mess. It really is a mess. But I think it was very unnatural.
Yes.
Shall we look ahead, if we can? Champions League.
Yes.
Tell us what we can look forward to.
Champions League. Well, we've got some big games. It's today and tomorrow again. Champions League penultimate games in the group stages of the Champions League. RB Salzburg. So Chelsea are away in Austria at Salzburg. So Chelsea, if they win that, they're assured of going through to the group stage. Borussia Dortmund versus Manchester City. So City are away in Dortmund. Again, they've been very good, so they're fine. But then if we look at Celtic, Celtic are playing Shakhtar Donetsk. Now, Celtic are playing at home, but they need to get a result, and this is really just to qualify for the Europa League. They're not going to qualify for the next stages of the Champions League. But if they come third, then they get Europa League. If they come last in the group, then they're out altogether. So it is still an important game for them, but it hasn't gone well for them so far.
Now, what's going on with Ronaldo? Because he's being snubbed. We all know he wants to go. He's being snubbed, isn't he, by other Premier League clubs?
Well, let's just go back to Wednesday and what happened. Just to get a little background, Cristiano Ronaldo, Spurs are playing at Manchester United, and then towards the end of the game, Erik ten Hag, the manager, says to Ronaldo, right, now you can go on. You can go on and play. And Ronaldo decides, don't fancy it. I don't want to go on. I don't want to play. And then decides to walk off back down the tunnel. Now, Rosie, you're giving me the eyes that I was giving as I was actually watching it at the same time. And it's like, and I'm just thinking, you're a player. You play for the club. The club is bigger than you are. It doesn't matter who you are. Yes, Cristiano Ronaldo is a huge star. We know that. And what a great player he's been. We know that. And we know how many Ballon d'Ors. That's all very well. But when you play for a football club, you do what the manager says. It's not the other way round. And so he then sloped off, and then a lot of people were saying...
and went, didn't he?
Well, it's pretty much it. And it's disgusting. It shouldn't happen. It's disrespecting the fans. It's disrespecting the club. And he's not doing himself any favours as well, because his legacy, I think, is just going down the toilet.
But he could be off to Napoli.
Well, he could be off to Napoli. He could be. I think he probably drove to the airport and then realised the airport was closed and then turned around again. But there's a lot of people that are coming out now and saying, for example, Kevin Peterson, famous cricketer, and he's been taken off the Instagram account Manchester United because he'd said something about the fact that Erik ten Hag is a clown, the manager. How could he do this to Cristiano Ronaldo? How dare he do this to someone who's such a great player? And this just makes me laugh, because if you play for the club, you as the manager says. Surely, and you don't go storming off down the tunnel so everybody can see you. So anyway, it does make me a little crazy, because I just think, you're ruining your legacy. You're not doing any good for the club. And yes, we know personally Cristiano Ronaldo's had a tough time, but it doesn't excuse what you're doing.
If they're paying you several £100,000 a week, then you should really do what you're told.
I think you'd do exactly as the manager
I
asks.
would.
Yeah, absolutely. But I've got one more for you, and
just
this
quickly.
is very quickly, and this is Unai Emery, who's now taken over as the manager of Aston Villa.
Yeah.
And there's a very strange... I mean, people talk about numerology, but it's like wordology here. So Unai Emery, Aston Villa, and they're paying Villarreal 5.2 million for his services. So Aston Villa, Villarreal to Aston Villa. He was also the manager of Sevilla, so Villa involved in that. He was also the manager of David Villa, another player, so, and I think he lives in a villa in somewhere as well. But it's all these strange villa...
There you go.
Isn't that unbelievable?
It was meant to be,
Do you think so? People will be tweeting that around the world when they hear me talk about the villa links.
You're going to go viral.
I know, Villaral is what I will be. I'll be vilified, I think, after this anyway, but there you go.
Lovely stuff, Paul.
Thank you. Right, after the break, we're going to be going back through the papers with Martin and Stephanie. Don't miss it.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Time to go through the papers this morning. Showbiz reporter, our very own Stephanie Tetchy, and journalist and former Brexit MEP Martin Daubney are both here. I should tell you, it's 7:41. And let's start with... I want to start, actually, with you, Martin, and The Telegraph, looking at Rishi Sunak, because you like a good rant.
Well, we had a nibble at Rishi earlier. Let's have nibble number 2.
Right, go on.
Breakfast time. Great column today by Sherelle Jacobs in The Telegraph, who's got a great brain on her. And opposed to moving the argument on, it's not just about splitting the party. She brings up some really interesting points. And the first one is this. Will there be defections of Conservatives in the Red Wall to other political parties, realising they are facing down the barrel of certain electoral wipeout? I think that could happen.
To which parties?
Well, possibly one of the new incumbent challengers, say, for example, Reform, Richard Tice's party. It will be the most natural home. If that happens, that would be a seismic event and it would start to pull apart the fabric.
Well, would it, though?
Yes, it would.
Because that happened last time with people going to... Well, I can't remember. It was UKIP.
Yeah, but
it didn't actually make any difference.
It's different this time because the next point is the Brexit rift, which is still there. The Remainers are jostling for position. Before Rishi came in, 7 out of 8 of the top positions are held by Remainers. There's a huge movement.
Does that matter now?
It does matter because Brexit is a fault line that still exists and certainly will come to the fore if the Labour Party get in, because Keir Starmer was the people's vote champion. But the third and final one is the economic backdrop to all of this does make everything different. And we've got Jeremy Hunt in place. Sherelle is saying, will we be looking at austerity 2.0? In which case, she is saying we may see mass protests and even violence during a winter of discontent. He's got the worst inbox of any Prime Minister coming into power. And it looks as though I think we need huge political change. The Conservative Party, I think, needs to start again. It's 2 parties and it needs to split. And we need a political revolution. And long may that continue.
But... You see, if you had the choice, if you were in power, and you've been a politician now, if you were in power, would you abandon austerity and put up taxes, or abandon tax rises and increase austerity?
Well, I will.
Because you've got to do one or the other, haven't you?
Some of the things that Rishi's putting forward look good, like trimming back on the civil service. You know, a bloated civil service where there's millions and millions wasted there. We could do away, for example, with all these sort of silly kind of net zero and kind of diversity officers that the public sector seems to employ. There are lots of ways of saving money, but will that be enough? Or maybe nobody can do it. And as I said earlier, the 2 big parties have had a go. Labour left the country bankrupt before the Tories got in. Now they're doing the same. I think it's time for something new, a fresh way of doing politics.
OK.
There we go. And lots of you contributing this morning as well. Please weigh into the conversation. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Stephanie, another group of people were causing quite a lot of disruption yesterday. They've been doing so for days. They decided to sort of take up stock at the Houses of Parliament as well, but also turning up at Madame Tussauds. Who are they? What were they doing?
Oh, my gosh. It is the Just Stop Oil activists, and they seem to be just reaping havoc all across the city. And their latest stunt was at Madame Tussauds yesterday, where they smeared cake over Prince Charles's face, waxwork. And what I don't understand about this...
Well, I'm glad you clarified. Waxwork.
What I don't understand about this is King Charles is one of the most sustainable champions we have out there. He's always talking about climate change. So for them to do this, it makes no sense. And to be honest, I don't mind protesting. I'm all for it. But these stunts are not actually helping them at all. And I'm actually quite scared that it's going to soon lock down the way we can view art soon, because security clearly needs to be increased for such places now.
But what they will say is they're just trying to get people talking about them, so they've got to do these stunts to engineer some conversation. So they don't really care, I don't think, if it doesn't make sense which waxwork it was. They just want to be talked about.
But to be honest, they are being talked about, but negatively. No one's actually thinking, oh, let me change my cause or let me become more sustainable. They're becoming a bit of a pain for people now. And art is one of the places where you can actually just enjoy and switch off, and they're spoiling that experience for society at whole.
It's interesting. We talked to one of the Just Stop Oil protesters yesterday, who's a GP. Oh. And he said, and he made it's a really valid point. He said, why do you care so much about a Van Gogh painting? Is that more important than saving the planet?
What I think is most important is people imposing their viewpoints on us in an act of cultural vandalism. These are priceless works of art. You may not like them as a protester, but you have no right to desecrate them. That's the way of totalitarianism. I don't agree with you, therefore I'm going to vandalise something. That's what ISIS do. These people are cretins. And that's for bringing the country to a stop by blocking the roads.
That is a very stark comparison you've made. You know, the paintings that have had soup thrown at them have been protected by glass, so it's more imagery than it is actual destruction.
It's the same point. I don't agree with you, therefore I'm going to vandalise and desecrate. That's not the actions of somebody who's going to win hearts and minds. It's the act of a moron. That's what I think.
And it doesn't help when you've got people like Sir Bob Geldof kind of egging them on now and getting more support to commit these acts at all. I think they're just going about it the wrong way. And also now that Rishi is in power, these are the kind of issues that we can't just keep on sweeping underneath the carpet. You know, young people have a voice and they want to be talking about this or acting out on this.
Well, I guess we're talking about them, though.
We are.
Yeah.
We're talking about them. To the Express, Martin, looking at migrants disappearing.
Yeah, this is an astonishing story, and I think should serve as another stark wake-up call to the Conservative government, which promised to take back control of our borders in 2016. The precise opposite has happened. We have leaking, open borders, and this story is a real wake-up call. A boat came ashore near Dover, and 50 migrants on board, 30 simply disappeared. They simply ran into the country, and one of these men turned up in a village called Aycliffe, just outside of Dover, appeared in a woman's bedroom, demanding a telephone to make his way to either London or Manchester. A neighbour had to come in and forcibly remove this guy, and astonishingly, the police are saying no offence was committed. Now, if you walked into someone's home and demanded a phone, do you think you'd get nicked? Of course you would. This is a travesty, it's an outrage, and unless the Tories get hold of this is another thing that's going to derail their government.
Yeah, well, you know, it's hard to disagree with that. It's the same with the protesters, though, isn't it? Whether they don't seem to be getting arrested, and if the rest of us went in and did what we were doing and started pouring milk all over a supermarket, I mean, you'd expect to be nicked pretty quickly, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Anyway, keep your thoughts through on all that. Martin, Stephanie, don't go anywhere because we're going to have you in for our taste test in just a couple of minutes.
But in the meantime, let's just bring you up to date with the other stories making headlines today. And some Conservative Party supporters have cancelled their memberships following Rishi Sunak's victory in the leadership contest. A couple of you are in the GB News inbox, actually. Well, some members have been expressing frustration over Mr Sunak's victory, with some saying the move has left them fuming that party members weren't able to vote for him to take over from Liz Truss.
Police will now have to consider the views of domestic abuse and sexual assault victims before releasing suspects from custody. New bail reforms will see officers told to only release them under investigation where it's necessary and proportionate. The changes to the rules will be introduced this week.
Well, Stephanie was just telling us about this. The Irish musician Bob Geldof has said he backs the climate change protesters who threw soup over Van Gogh's sunflowers. Two Just Stop Oil activists threw tomato soup at the painting at the National Gallery earlier this month. And Sir Geldof said they're not killing anyone, climate change will.
Kim Kardashian is calling for an end to violence and hateful rhetoric towards the Jewish community. It comes after anti-Semitic demonstrators in Los Angeles praised her ex-husband Kanye West for remarks he's made on Twitter and Instagram, from which the US rapper has now been suspended.
The US actor and comedian Leslie Jordan, known for his role as Beverly Leslie in the TV series Will and Grace, has died. Jordan was reportedly involved in a car accident in Hollywood. Well, the Emmy Award-winning actor was 67.
And about 25% of the sun will be blocked by the moon this morning as it passes between it and the Earth. People across the UK will be able to see the phenomenon if you've got the right protective eyewear. Sky gazers in northern Scotland will have the best views. Should begin just after 10 o'clock, come to an end just before noon.
And we've got an expert coming up on the programme in about an hour's time to give us top tips on how to watch it and where to watch it.
Because you won't notice
a little bit.
Well, you won't. If you're just out and about, you won't notice the difference. You just don't notice that the sun is so bright, you don't notice the difference until about 98% of it is gone. So there you go. It's why when there's a total eclipse, I went to the Faroe Islands to see the last one. Why, you know, it's why the darkness comes so quickly. It just when it gets to that last 2% and it just goes, and so it's very dramatic.
So more on that to come. Also, I have been...
You don't need an expert, I'll just do it.
I've been a little bit distracted while I've been reading the news because some new things have cropped up on the desk here, and we've been talking about it all morning. Would you eat insects as part of your regular diet? Shoppers could soon be able to pick up edible insects, clearly, from the supermarket.
Yes. Now, I'm being unfair. I'm a vegetarian. I've been for 40-odd years now, so it's just the idea to me is not very nice. But if you're... You know, if you're a meat eater, it's a good source of protein, apparently. And Aldi is considering selling edible insects to help families struggling with the cost of living crisis.
Well, the supermarket giant met with Aaron Thomas and Leo Taylor of Yum Bug, who appeared on Channel 4's new programme, Aldi's Next Big Thing, on Thursday night. And they're in the studio with us. A very good morning to both of you. So, Yum Bug, just tell us what you've brought in.
Right, so we've got a couple of cricket-based canapes here. So we've got one canapé with strips made out of cricket with a delicious guacamole and pickled onion.
Interesting you said that the guacamole was the delicious bit, not the bug.
The crickets are absolutely delicious.
I'm surprised with the strips. I mean, it looks positively meaty. I'm surprised there's that much meat in a cricket.
There is actually a fair amount of meat. I mean, they're quite similar to prawns. And the thing is, I mean, we love prawns in the West, but they're actually, you know, they look just like insects, and they're you know, to the extent that they're related to crickets. So if you're allergic to shellfish, you might also be allergic to crickets.
Oh, right.
And 80% of the world eats this stuff, over 80% of countries. It's really just the West that don't. So you know, for us, it's all about, you know, that cultural perception, because it is a meat, and you know, we're just trying to show people.
All right, let's start passing them around then.
Yeah. So, Aaron, what's the other one?
So we have a tortilla shell topped with a ragu made out of a cricket-based mince, and then we also have sour cream and some chives on top.
Well, there's definitely some for you two as well.
Of course.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Don't just pass around.
I mean,
this is our classic breakfast. So.
when we're looking at the meat here, the like cricket meat, and all that, how difficult is it to sort of do what you need to do with a cricket to get what you need out of it?
Well, so for the mince, for example, we treat it almost exactly like you would a beef mince. We mince, just before anyone takes a bite, no one's allergic to shellfish or gluten.
No. Did you just go all in one, Aaron?
Yeah.
Okay,
so what am I
I've never seen this guy eat because he eats so quick.
What am I about to eat?
Sorry.
So which bit's the cricket on this? The dark at the bottom?
Yeah, the strips. The strips, yep.
And the idea is...
There's a lot of meat there. Can't get over how, you know, how
about
chunky it
30%
is.
protein as well.
Right.
It's really high in protein. Steak is probably max about 27%, so even more protein than steak.
What am I about to eat?
So it's a tortilla shell made with a with a ragu made with a mince made from about 75% Cambridgeshire farmed crickets, topped with some sour cream and some chips.
It smells quite
struggling,
good.
Martin?
Yeah, it's cricket, right?
Yeah.
Cricket.
It make you jump higher.
It might make you jump higher.
honest,
You eat enough of it.
I think that was delicious.
It's about a third more protein than your Waitrose beef mince.
It actually tastes all right.
What does it taste of?
It tastes mainly of the ragu. I can taste the ragu, and then underneath that, just a
I can taste mostly the sauce.
And talk to us about what the supermarkets have said, because I think for most people, you might think, oh, I'll have a chili con carne, or you wouldn't think these will be your ingredients. So you've got quite a bit of a journey to go on to persuade the public that they could have this for tea on a Monday night.
Absolutely. I mean, the challenge for us is how do we take the stuff mainstream? You know, how do we get it on the supermarket shelves?
I mean, presumably you're sort of buying it in, you know, frozen bags of it or whatever, so it's already prepared like that, so you would just cook it?
Absolutely. Exactly. And they cook exactly like you'd expect. So you can throw the mince into whatever mince dish you want. The strips cook up just like a beef strip.
And how much do they cost?
Yeah, will they be quite expensive?
So because we're not selling into retail currently, most of our sales are into food service, into restaurants, and we are sort of on par with what the restaurants would pay for their beef equivalent.
Right.
It's
the potential of getting it cheaper, because that's going to be key to people, isn't it?
100%. Yeah. I think one of the big opportunities here is you can feed insects off stuff that we throw away, so you can recapture a waste stream and turn it into what's otherwise a superfood. You know,
Stuff like pea husks, grains, etc. Stuff of byproducts of grain production generally.
And at scale, price will absolutely come down.
You know what?
At scale,
I think it's fascinating.
It's then got to go from novelty item to staple, doesn't it, though, for that to happen?
Well, why not? If it tastes all right.
Well, if I start rubbing my legs together and singing.
Nothing would surprise me about you, Martin. Leo, Aaron, thank you both very much indeed. If you fancy it, let us know. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Tastes all right, apparently. There you go. We've got much more coming up for you after the weather.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Rishi Sunak tells Conservatives to unite or die as he prepares to take over as Prime Minister.
Well, a very good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Tuesday, the 25th of October. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen Ambrosi.
Here's what's making the headlines for you this morning. Rishi Sunak will take over as Prime Minister today. Oh, apologies.
After meeting with the King.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's appropriate, isn't it, with the national anthem? In an address to Conservatives behind closed doors last night, he called for unity within the party as he prepares to name his new cabinet. How much of a reshuffle will there be?
Well, the outgoing Prime Minister Liz Truss will leave Downing Street later this morning following a farewell statement outside of Number 10.
Comes as new figures are being released by the Office for National Statistics, showing supermarket groceries increased in cost by about 70% over the last 12 months, vegetable oil rising the most at 80 pence per litre.
And the Pride of Britain Awards took place last night, celebrating the achievements of people who make a significant contribution to the country. We're going to meet one of the winners and give you the highlights from the star-studded event.
As always, we want to hear from you this morning. Loads of you getting in touch about Mr. Sunak. If you want to talk about anything else, that would be nice too. Just so we're not just so politics heavy. So we've talked about nothing but politics for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, have we? If there's anything else you want to chat about, we'd love to hear from you. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So we have a new leader of the Conservative Party. Rishi Sunak will meet with King Charles this morning, where he'll formally be appointed as Britain's new Prime Minister. It's after he addressed the country yesterday.
It is the greatest privilege of my life to be able to serve the party I love and give back to the country I owe so much to. The United Kingdom is a great country, but there is no doubt we face a profound economic challenge. We now need stability and unity, and I will make it my utmost priority to bring our party and our country together.
It's a very odd statement, actually. Not at all dynamic. Not what we're used to from Rishi Sunak. And
yeah, an odd delivery from him.
Very odd. Very odd. Can't quite work that out yet, but no, try and get to the bottom of that. And why he's not looking at that camera, I don't know. But anyway, look, despite all of these calls, some Conservative Party supporters are apparently already cancelling their memberships following Rishi's victory yesterday.
Well, we've been getting reaction from across the country. Let's start, shall we, in Rishi Sunak's constituency of Richmond in Yorkshire to see what people had to say.
Well, he's been good as far as a local MP goes. I mean, the times that I've had any problems, they've been sorted pretty fast. We'll have to wait and see what the Prime Minister's going to be like.
Brilliant. He's an excellent constituency MP, always has been, works hard, very nice person. I think he's sensible, clever. I think he'll make a really good PM.
Nice bloke. They just need to know what the public want, don't they? Bring everything.
Oh, we've also been out and about in Birmingham asking people there for their thoughts.
He's part of the party that all the scandals was with, so I don't see why he should be in charge. It's the same group as Boris, really, so I think it's a pure joke.
It's best of a bad job, I think, to be quite honest. I don't know, I'd rather they weren't in power, but after the last lot, it's just been ridiculous.
Boris, I think he did well, overwhelmed by Partygate and everything, just in a bad state at the moment, so...
Well, let's speak to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who's in Downing Street for us this morning. Tom, we have literally another changing of the guards. Just talk us through what's going to happen today.
Yes, there is a bit of a stage-managed process that's going to go on, not only in this street, but also, of course, at Buckingham Palace. The first port of call today is 9 a.m. Leading up to that, we'll see the current members of the Cabinet traipse down this street for their final Cabinet meeting. That's held at 9. The Prime Minister will chair it and no doubt say her thank yous and goodbyes to her ministers. After that, the Prime Minister is expected to walk out onto this street and say some parting words as Prime Minister. We're expecting that to take place at around 10:15. After that, Liz Truss is getting in her Prime Ministerial car for a final time, taking the short drive from Downing Street to Buckingham Palace, where she will tender her formal resignation to His Majesty the King. Once that's done, Rishi Sunak, it's his turn to turn up at the palace and have his first audience with the King, do the so-called kissing of hands, and be formally appointed as Prime Minister. After that, Rishi Sunak hops in what is now his prime ministerial car, comes to Downing Street and says his first words on this street at what we expect will be around 11:35. And after that, Rishi Sunak walks into that famous shining black door behind me for the first time as Prime Minister, clapped in by all of the civil servants who work here, and no doubt gets to work pretty sharpish on assembling his cabinet. Through the afternoon, we expect new ministers and old to be walking up and down this street as they learn exactly what jobs they get in this new government. And Rishi Sunak has been promising that this will be more of a unifying government. Some supporters of his opponents and indeed supporters of him. Perhaps not the biggest changeover in roles compared to the last time round we saw this, 7 weeks ago. We should expect some continuity with some change.
OK, Tom, thank you. Christine's been in touch this morning. I wish Rishi Sunak well, as our country is in his hands. However, I expect our country's Prime Minister to be patriotic, not a citizen of the world. He has a US green card, which allows him to live in America. Well, he doesn't, Christine, anymore. His wife is a non-dom. Well, that, again, Christine, that's not true anymore. But she says all this means he's out of touch. Well, I mean, all those things were true, but have now changed. So does that make a difference? John says, I think this is a very smart move by the Conservatives. It's going to make big holes in the Labour vote in working-class areas with large Asian communities, which actually it could do, couldn't it? Let's get more reaction from local government editor of Conservative Home, Harry Phibbs, who's here. Good to see you.
Morning.
So what do you reckon?
It's interesting, actually, that the big, not just national story, but international story is this first non-white Prime Minister, first British Asian Prime Minister. But in the Conservative Party, they don't really care. I mean, that's what's the wonderful thing about the Conservatives is that they don't care about identity politics, and the Labour Party, where it's a really big deal, of course, have been way behind. But no, if they go along to these, we had all these endless hustings, of course, with Rishi Sunak and Liz. They was all, what are you going to do about cutting crime, cutting tax, school standards? You know, has this person got the right ideas? Have they got good policies? And it's very much, content of their character rather than colour of their skin. So, I think that's fantastic. But actually, the Conservative Party, they don't really care.
Well, let's talk about his character. He made it very clear yesterday to the party. We've got two options here: we unite or we die as a party. Is he going to be the personality that can pull it all together?
Yes, I think so, and I actually think that. Liz Truss has been quite unfairly treated in all sorts of respects, and that many of the problems that he's having to cope with now, won't have sort of miraculously gone away, and they didn't miraculously start with a mini budget. But I do feel the mood is among all sections of the Conservative Party now is to support him. So I think he'll be given a much better chance, put it that way, than Liz Truss.
Well, we're getting an awful lot of views from people who are big sort of Boris fans, predominantly, who feel that Rishi Sunak, did in for Boris, and as a result say they're now all going to resign and join Reform or some other such party. What would you say to them?
Well, I think that they should give Rishi Sunak a chance. There were a lot of very strong Brexiteers who supported Rishi Sunak. They would have had, quite rigorous conversations with him because, of course, although Brexit's got done in the sense we're not in the European Union, there's still this huge burden of EU regulation, and that's a very important bit of unfinished business in the next couple of years before the general election. Liz Truss was determined to deliver on that. Let's see if Rishi Sunak is too. I think that if he is, then the Brexiteers and the free marketeers should welcome that and give him a chance to deliver.
Grown up in the room. That's how one of our viewers described him earlier on. The grown-up's back in charge. Do you think that's right?
I've never liked the phrase grown up. It always seems rather sort of arrogant. He's obviously very...
the idea that someone like... I mean, we don't know about Liz Truss, but that Boris was, a little bit petulant and not across the detail and what have you. And here's a man who does seem to be, appears at the moment at least, to be quite calm and across the detail, as hard as that detail is.
Yes, I think that's absolutely fair, that he's obviously a very capable... a decent man. Absolutely has got the right motives. I absolutely think he's patriotic. So the question is his principles, his policies. Are they true Conservative ones? And I think actually we'll see there maybe won't be that much difference between what he does in practice and Liz Truss. There was all this stuff about Liz Truss wanting a small state and that being discredited. Actually, of course, the big item that she brought in was this huge increase in state spending with the energy price guarantee, which, arguably would be necessary. But it was a very generous scheme that was talked about maybe costing £100 billion. So that's a big spending increase. We may actually see Rishi Sunak being obliged to do more in terms of having a small state, in terms of getting public spending done, because that'll be the reality that he'll face.
OK. Harry, good to see you, as always. Thanks very much.
Well, let's find out a little bit about what you think. Joining us now is Peter Vaughan, GB News viewer and listener. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. I know that you personally are delighted because throughout the leadership campaign, you really sort of held the torch for Rishi Sunak. And tell us why it is that you are so confident of his ability that you think the Conservatives will win the next election.
Ever since he came on the scene some years ago, spoken to the people in Richmond, and they think he's brilliant up there. I just think his competence is just superb. In my opinion, he's probably the best economist member of Parliament we've had since the Second World War. He's very, very experienced. He's very pragmatic. He's the kind of person who you would want on your side all the time. And if he can get the party together now, because we've had several years of just chaos, absolute chaos, the Tory party pulling itself to bits, and we now need somebody to come on, to calm the markets, to get the markets on our side. Already the cost of borrowing is coming down. And I just think he's going to have a very good premiership, and I just simply think that in a couple of years' time, the country will be warming to him, and I think the Conservatives will win the next general election.
But he's going to start his premiership, isn't he, by having to put up taxes, but by hook or by crook, and which is not a very Conservative thing to do.
No, it isn't. But I think he's the kind of person who will get people on their side because of the way that he explains things to people. And I think people remember when we were in a hell of a mess some time ago, and he brought in the furlough scheme and the policy concerning people dining out. I think people realise, and they will realise from watching him operating on the world stage too, where I think he will be a significant personality. I think they will warm to him and he will win them round. And they will realise that policies have to be put through because of the mess that we're in.
Peter, what did you think of yesterday when Rishi Sunak came out and made that very short statement? He looked, I don't know if almost a tiny bit shell-shocked or just unsure or unaware. What do you think was going on?
Yeah, it shows his experience. His inexperience, personally. I thought he was rather wooden. And I think he probably needs some lessons in reading off the auto cue. But, yes, and people were commenting on the fact that he ignored Matt Hancock. I didn't see that at all. I mean, it's the beginning, isn't it? It's the beginning. He's got to get his bottom into the chair, and he's got to work through all these problems and get more and more experience. And I think he has the personality to really do it and really turn things round for the Conservatives.
It's interesting. I mean, it's great that you're so positive, and let's hope you're right. Not that we're commenting about the next election, but hope you're right in terms of turning things round for the country and getting the economy right. But it's going to prove to be a difficult 12 months at least, isn't it? It's going to take 12 months to know if his policies are really working.
Yes, we have to get the markets on our side. We have to go through a very, very rough passage. I mean, the fact that Narendra Modi from India has been sending his congratulations. I mean, India is a major economy in the world, and if we can get some things going with the Indians, especially trade, I think that's going to be a very, very big plus for us. And I think a lot of the major politicians in the world will warm to Rishi, and I think he will fit in well. I'd like to see him working with Macron because that may well be the answer to the immigration problem we have with those little boats coming across. I certainly think that Macron will be the key to that.
I tell you what, Peter, you know your stuff, don't you? It's a real pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Stephen, I've been following politics for 80 years. So, yeah, I love it to bits, and hopefully I'm going to take some money off the bookies in 2 years' time.
Let's hope so, Peter, thank you. But can I ask, I know it's probably, some people, Peter, may say it's very rude, but can I ask how old you are then if you've been following it for 80 years?
I'm 79.
Oh.
And I lost my wife 3 months ago.
Oh, Peter, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to hear that. Thank you.
She would have sat there and said, "Oh, you bloody fool! What are you going on the television for?"
Oh, I don't know. I bet somewhere she's smiling at you getting your bit of airtime, Peter. All the best to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Oh, God love him. God love him. He knows his stuff. He knows his stuff, and he's passionate about what he believes in.
And really positive for what's to come. Positive enough to put a bet on the Conservatives winning the election. You may not put yourself in that camp, but whatever you think of Rishi Sunak, and it's something that we've touched across already this morning, he has become the country's first Asian Prime Minister. That is a historic milestone. And our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, has been speaking to members of the South Asian community to find out how they feel about the new Prime Minister.
I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
From the shortest-serving PM in history to one of the shortest-serving male PMs this century.
So many of you say to me, "Wow, you're even shorter in real life."
He's only 5'6", but achieving the highest office in the land is a big moment.
Let me tell you a story about a young woman almost a lifetime ago.
During the leadership campaign in the summer, we heard a lot about his background.
And the love of her family.
He's also spoken about his experience of racism, telling the BBC in 2019 how he'd experienced the P word while sitting in a fast food restaurant with his family when he was young. "It's seared in my memory," he said. "It stung in a way that is hard to explain." And that's why the UK's first British Asian and Hindu PM means a lot to worshippers here. This is one of Europe's biggest Hindu temples in Neasden, northwest London. They're celebrating Diwali, the Hindu festival of light, on the day Sunak won the race to be PM.
I think it's a very proud and historic moment for the British Indian community. I think more importantly for the younger generation to take inspiration that, people of all backgrounds, from all ethnicities, can aspire to the highest office. They can engage in public service and be a part of that world. I think that's very significant.
But not everyone from an Asian background thinks the PM's colour is relevant.
It's not about race. It's someone who needs... Our country is, at the moment, our country is, on the downfall.
I think it's actually quite positive for us as British Asians, of course, because it's the first time it's ever happened, and it's opened doors for us younger generation. So I'm a student here in Birmingham, and I feel like it gives us the opportunity and the inspiration to go after a job like that, knowing that somebody from our background has got that.
At 42 years old, he's also the youngest PM for over 200 years.
Well, when I was a kid, I wanted to be in a Star Wars movie, so that's probably not a sensible thing to do. But I'm a massive football fan. I'm from Southampton, and if I would get to be able to run Southampton football... Oh, wow, is there a Saints fan here? Look at that!
This was 3 years ago when he was Chief Secretary to the Treasury, seeing the latest flick with the then-Chancellor Sajid Javid. The force, however, was with Sunak. A few months later, he became Chancellor and had to borrow record sums of money to support the economy through COVID, dishing out his Eat Out to Help Out scheme to support the hospitality industry. The following April, along with Boris Johnson, he was fined for breaking lockdown rules but refused to resign, choosing instead to step down as Chancellor in July after the PM's handling of Chris Pincher's resignation as Deputy Chief Whip. Sunak's departure triggering the downfall of Boris Johnson's government, something the former PM's supporters have never forgiven him for. But September's loser is October's winner.
I'd like to pay tribute to Liz Truss for her dedicated public service to the country.
Can he unite his party and get inflation down? And does he have the ability to win over voters in the famous Red Wall seats? He'll need all his Jedi mind tricks. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Well, it is those Red Wall seats that are going to be one of the key issues, actually, one of the biggest sort of nuts he's got to crack in all of this. Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis is in one of those seats, Sutton in Ashfield. Morning, Will. What do people there make of it all?
Yes, good morning. Well, it's still very quiet. A few people are going about this morning, but this was one of those seats, Ashfield, this town, Sutton in Ashfield, that was so essential for the Conservatives in 2019. 3 years ago might seem like a short time, but gosh, so much has happened since then. But it was one of these essential seats that turned to the Conservatives for the first time in a very long time, since the 1970s, for this particular seat. And that's essentially one of the main reasons why the Conservatives got that massive majority and why they won in 2019. This is, of course, the Red Wall, because it's a working class area, industrial area, collieries in this particular part of the Midlands. So mainly a Labour vote. And that's why maybe some MPs in this sort of an area were so keen to have Boris back, because in 2019 there was really two things that people were voting for: the double B, the double-barreled B, Boris and Brexit. So seeing Boris stand down only a couple of nights ago, and then Rishi Sunak, who maybe isn't as popular in this part of the country, might worry a few people and might change their minds to slip back to Labour. Of course, it is very early. I did have a chance to speak to a couple of people, though, that were milling around. I had a chance to speak to the local butcher who's just round the corner. He said that Rishi Sunak is the best of a bad bunch. And then just in a cafe around the corner, I had a chance to speak to a group of older ladies that were having a morning coffee. And I said, what do you think of Rishi Sunak? And one of the ladies said, well, he's going to be better than the other one. I said, oh, what do you mean, Boris Johnson? And the whole group said, no, we love Boris Johnson better than Liz Truss. So with only 44 days in office before she resigned, I think Rishi Sunak has a very low bar set in front of him. But of course, he was a Brexit voter. He voted mainly for Brexit policies, but whether it's getting the local people who vote for the Tories or getting his MPs on side, of course, what he said yesterday in his first conversation with MPs was he needs to unite the party or the party will die. Maybe it's not so much the Conservative voters at this point when there's an election 2 years out, but the people that represent those voters in places here like Ashfield.
Well, thanks very much indeed. And as you saw during that, we're keeping an eye on Downing Street. People going in. There's going to be a cabinet meeting at 9:15 with Liz Truss still as Prime Minister. And then she'll give her speeches and all the rest of it. And then it's goodbye to her and hello to Prime Minister Sunak.
Do stay with us for all of that and the developments across the day here on GB News. Now, after the break here on Breakfast, Ellie Phillips will be here giving us all the details from last night's Pride of Britain Awards. That's after the weather.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie's. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back. 28 minutes past 8, you're with Breakfast here on GB News. Lots to come on the programme. Could the cost of energy mean it's lights out for Christmas this year? Well, we're going to find out how a man who keeps his lights on all year, and there are a lot of them, is adapting to the cost of living.
And a partial solar eclipse is going to be visible across the UK this morning, about 10 o'clock. We'll tell you how to view it safely.
Well, you can get involved with any of our discussions this morning. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or drop us a tweet too @gbnews. Well, a host of famous faces walked the red carpet last night at the Pride of Britain Awards.
Now, it recognises the unsung heroes of the UK, who are all nominated by members of the public.
Our showbiz reporter Ellie Phillips was there and joined us now in the studio to tell us all about it on very limited sleep, I believe. A lot of famous faces you met last night.
So many famous faces. Celebrities turned out in their droves to pay tribute to these real-life heroes. And it was really interesting to chat to loads of them on the red carpet. I spoke to so many, but I've got some highlights for you.
OK.
So if you watch Bridgerton, then you will love Lady Danbury. Her real name in real life is Andrea Ando, and I asked her why the night was so important to her.
Tonight is not about all us in our fancy frocks. It's about ordinary, regular people who are unsung and who aren't celebrated and who don't get flashing photos and all that sort of stuff, but who are generally going about the world being generous, kind, decent, thoughtful, looking out for strangers, doing stuff that's of no benefit other than it's a lovely thing and a right thing to do. And that goodness we should celebrate, and that goodness should encourage us that even when things are really hard, these are the values that the vast majority of people hold to, and we should thank them and we should celebrate them and we should put them in the spotlight for once.
Yes, do you know, I'm fascinated to see what she looks like because I've never watched Bridgerton, but Adjoa Ando is a very big radio drama actress as well, so I've heard her voice for years on the radio.
And she's incredibly talented, and she's very political as well. I chatted to her a lot about... I think the thing about Pride of Britain is people are much more willing to talk about things that really matter, especially in the current climate we've got going on. So she went into detail about that. Someone else I spoke to, if you watch The Chase, she's the vixen on The Chase. Her name's Jenny Ryan. Really talented woman, very intelligent. And I asked her, considering it's a night of inspiration, who inspires her?
Family are incredible. My mum in particular, she raised me as a single parent. She was working as a nurse. And, you know, when I was a kid, we didn't have 2 pennies to rub together sometimes, and she never let me know. She let me just believe I could do whatever I wanted with my life. And, you know, look at me now. I'm so proud of her. I think I'm prouder of her than she ever could be of me, and she is 1,000,000% proud of me.
It was so nice to hear so many people just speak, you know, more meaningful subject matter rather than kind of like.
Well, they're not having to
gossip.
flog anything, are they?
Yeah, they're there because it means something. It's very, very important. What was incredible last night was a real favourite for me. Was speaking to some of the Lionesses because they were honoured at the Pride of Britain because obviously they won. They've made us all incredibly proud. They've done a lot for women in sport. I spoke to Alessia Russo and I asked her how it felt to be honoured for Pride of Britain Award. And I also spoke to Rachel Daly and asked her if they expected such a reaction to their Euros win.
Amazing. I think tonight's not about us, though. It's about everything that the country's done. I think for us, our summer was really successful, but nights like this knock everything out the park.
No, I don't think anyone did, because I think for us, we're just so humble, down-to-earth kind of people. We know where we've come from, so when you see these kind of events and we're invited to and we're picking up awards, it's absolutely massive. But yeah, I think the overriding emotion is pride.
Wow, I tell you what, that's some frock, though.
I know!
It's amazing!
It's so great to see these women who will go on a pitch, no makeup, hair up, absolutely smash it, do us proud, and then just look incredible on a red carpet. I think it's like absolute girl power.
Yeah, oh yeah. Now, I'll tell you who I'm impressed with, because, did I mention it on air the other day? I don't know. But I was out at a garden centre the other day, and I saw Mary Berry.
Yeah.
And we were sat there having a cup of tea in the cafe, like you do, and we were like, oh, it's Mary Berry.
I thought you meant you were Mary.
I did! I was like, oh, ooh, what cake did she have?
well, we had coffee and walnut cake, and then she walked past with a group of her friends, and they just were out having a wander around the garden.
That's a good seal of approval for that cafe if Mary Berry's prepared to eat your cake.
Yeah, I was about to say.
But it was really nice to see her, because it's just like, it's Mary Berry.
It's Mary Berry, and that's the thing. So she came on to the red carpet, and you have all these amazing stars, and Dame Mary Berry turns up. So I spoke to her. I asked her what's important to her, talking about that. I asked her what her biggest achievement is, and also who helped her along the way.
I was helped by, originally, my cookery teacher, and I hope that I've inspired many people to cook for their families and enjoy it.
She's such a little superstar, honestly. She's the sweetest woman.
And she's 87.
Yeah, and she was very much like, she wanted to talk about the people there, the people being honoured as well, and that was really nice to see. It's a very, very humbling event for celebrities.
But she's also, I mean, she's been through her own personal tragedy, hasn't she? She lost her son many years ago now. And I sort of think not that you wish a tragedy on anybody, but when it gives them a different perspective, doesn't it, as well?
100%, yeah, absolutely agree with that, and yeah.
Let's go from one reality star baking to dancing instead.
Yeah, Strictly Stars were out in force last night. I spoke to loads of them. Yeah, we're partway through the series. These two are actually dating in real life, and they're both professional dancers on the show. Nadia Baktrova and Kai Widrington. So I asked them what it's like to work on Strictly with someone you're in a relationship with.
Well, we have to help each other create the choreography. So, like, if, you know, Nadia and Matt had a samba, I had a Charleston, I was like, right, I've got Charleston. Do you want to help me create the Charleston? And then we'll do it on a Sunday morning in the kitchen somewhere, and we'll, in the slippers. So that's the magic behind Strictly.
They're always so happy, aren't they?
I know.
The Strictly people. It's the fixed grin.
I think so both of their partners are out of Strictly now. Yeah, Nadia was with Matt Goss and Kai was with Kay Adams, who was the first to go out. So they're actually saying it's kind of bittersweet because obviously they want to do really, really well, but now they get to spend more time together because they're not having to rehearse every week with their dance partner, so their relationship can blossom. So it's nice to chat.
And they probably get paid the same.
Probably.
So there you go. Not bad.
Win-win.
Put your feet up. Lovely. Ellie, thank you very much indeed. We're going to be talking to one of the winners of Pride of Britain a little bit later on.
Right now, it's 25 minutes to 9. After the break, we're going to be going through the papers again with Martin and Stephanie. Don't miss it.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
It's 8:39, morning to you. Time for the papers. Stephanie Tetchy and Martin Daubney are here. Good to see you both once again. We've got to have a little bit of Rishi Sunak this morning. And I know you both picked various stories from various papers about it. What do we make of it all? Stephanie, I want to start with you before Martin kicks off.
Before he goes off. I think the big thing for me, you know, being an ethnic minority, is obviously the big song and dance that the newspapers have been making about, you know, Rishi being the first Asian Prime Minister and also the first Hindu Prime Minister. You know, for me, it's always bigger than your skin colour or your faith. But I do see the historic value of what has just happened yesterday and him becoming the first Prime Minister. And also, I do think it is quite inspirational for people who are coming up to realise that actually there is room for such people, whether you're Asian or black, to enter politics. And now there is a chance for you to get to the top as well. And also, I think it helps those communities as well who might not be interested in politics. Because then when you do see someone who looks like you or comes from the same background from you, all of a sudden you think there's a bit of hope. But the thing is, I would, you know, urge people, if you are ethnic minority, not just to base just because of someone's skin colour and think automatically that means he's going to do a good job. It's bigger than that. The real test for Rishi now is going to see how he can unite the party and how he can help us out of this economic mess.
Well, the Cabinet will be meeting this morning. If you're listening on the radio, well, we've got live pictures on the TV right now of ministers arriving. Jeremy Hunt's just arrived at Downing Street. Martin, the conversations going on this morning will be one probably echoing what that's very shortly to be Prime Minister said. We've got to unite or die.
Yeah, when you see those kind of people, Jeremy Hunt shuffling through the door at number 10, it really does feel like he's rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Penny Mordaunt's just arriving as well now.
I do question how important it is to see these people going into what is a Liz Truss cabinet meeting, because they may not have any jobs when they come out of it.
Well, I hope that's the case with some of them, because we have 7 out of 8 of the top positions in the land now filled by Remainiacs and rejoiners. And I do fear about the future of Brexit, and a lot of Conservative members do too.
Why does that matter, how someone voted previously or how they campaigned? That doesn't mean they can't work for the best situation that we're in now.
It means that everything is up for grabs, and especially as we're looking down the barrel of a socialist government, because at the moment the Tories have somehow, astonishingly, squandered an 80-seat majority, and they've basically handed power to Labour without them doing anything.
Well, they haven't yet, because there's not going to be a general election. But the question is, the situation that Rishi Sunak inherits, what can he do to make the best of it now?
Probably nothing. Could Jesus...
Do you think it's all pointless, Martin?
Seriously, what I think is that we have a country that's divided, and we have a Conservative Party, which I think is perhaps terminally divided by things like Brexit, by things like net zero, its inability to control immigration. There's a party in existential crisis, and to appoint a leader without going to the membership, who would never have chosen Sunak, they rejected him 7 weeks ago, I think shows it's an absolute calamity. The newspapers today are predicting civil unrest. If they go down the route of austerity Mark II and they start chomping into people...
I think it was one commentator in the papers who said there could be civil unrest because of the financial difficulties we're in. That's not sort of like a rallying cry from all the papers this morning.
But it's a reality.
I'll tell you what, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Martin's a bit of a misery guts, isn't he?
No, to be honest, I think it's a poison chalice for any party who gets into power, to be honest. I think it's like the same issue will face a Labour candidate or a Conservative candidate, so I don't think it's going to be an easy job for anybody.
Yeah.
And if Rishi's put himself up for the job, he must have a bit of hope that he can do it and fulfil it.
I just sort of think, Martin, there's more holes in your argument than a Swiss cheese.
Well, there's holes more than there are in the borders of this country.
Because,
and that's what the Tories...
No, but you say, they should have gone to the membership. Yeah. If the membership had chosen someone other than Rishi Sunak, then you get a Prime Minister who's the majority of his MPs aren't behind him, which we know historically is a disaster. You said we should have a general election and Labour would win. That's what you said in the 6 o'clock hour. And yet you've said, a Labour socialist government would be a disaster for this country. You can't... What do you want?
This comes down to one thing, and it's something that's haunted the Conservatives since 2016. The Conservative Party think they know better than the public, and they don't listen to the public. Theresa May almost sold us to Brussels. That's why people like myself got involved and went out there and made sure they got back on track and did their job. And they're not listening again, particularly in the Red Wall. Red Wall on MPs, Conservatives are on the verge of defecting to other parties like Reform. This is a disaster for the Tories, and I think, actually, they deserve it.
But Rishi Sunak has, perhaps, we don't know, but perhaps can appeal to the centre ground. And it's not, although some Tories are not happy, perhaps appealing to those people who otherwise would vote Labour or Lib Dem... or SNP is going to be very important, isn't it?
Well, I just think at the moment there's just been too many egos. There's too many egos which need to settle down now so we can actually get, concentrate at the problem at hand. And I just think at the moment, with all these different issues, it's like Rishi's got a big job, and where he needs to start is tackling what is going on at home first, and then we can look at the other issues such as Brexit.
OK. Should we leave Rishi there?
Just
for the time being.
So
I mean,
to give you the
honestly.
sort of architecture of what's going to happen, there's a cabinet meeting this morning, as Stephen did just point out, Liz Truss's cabinet. Liz Truss will speak, and then later on today, we expect at late morning, Rishi Sunak will meet with the King and then will be formally instated as Prime Minister. Of course, we'll keep you up to speed with all the developments there, but let's...
I was going to say, Liz Truss is going to give her farewell speech, though, on the steps of Number 10 there, which may be longer than her premiership. Well, no, it's true. I just wonder what she's going to say in a farewell speech. I mean, nothing's really happened.
Well, it's 10:15. We'll bring it to you here so you won't miss it.
Should we have a look at the FT, Martin? University staff are now threatening to go on strike.
Yeah, this may come as a surprise to many students who basically lost 2 years of being able to go to university, or they were imprisoned in their rooms learning remotely online, while still paying the happy premium of £9,000 per year for the privilege. And now university staff, 150 universities are threatening a full-blown walkout to bring the education system to a standstill over pay and pensions. Now, I would say this, for starters, I think the students should go on strike and stop paying the universities. If they're being denied the right to education, they were denied all along, then why isn't there some payback? Secondly, I think there are too many universities in Britain anyway. I think we too many people go to university getting Mickey Mouse degrees. Why aren't we putting more emphasis on trade, on apprenticeships and real skills to help people get real jobs?
The problem is you talk about students going on strike, they haven't got the option. Because the minute the payments don't go through, everything is everything's. Oh, you've got to have your computer logins, or else they suspend it.
Yeah,
and they suspend it, so you can't keep learning.
And it's a kind of, I think, a grim look into a Labour government where I think the unions who bankroll the party will be controlling the country. It's back to the 1970s.
The Labour government that you say should be now in power because we'd have a general election.
Stephen, don't go there. We've moved on. We're going back.
Put it to the public. That's what I say about democracy. I'm an old-fashioned person who believes in asking the people, not the inner echelons of the Conservative Party. But that's just me.
There you go.
Let's turn to The Guardian, shall we? Page 11, Stephanie. And I fear I know how this may go down with some of our viewers already, but a new idea of how to combat mental health with young people.
I love this idea, actually. So the NHS Mental Health Trust, they're trying to bring an initiative called social prescribing, where they're going to use 600 people who suffer from mental health ages between 11 and 18 to take up more activities such as gardening, surfing, and just them generally being outdoors. And I think this is such a good idea because a lot of people who are on these waiting lists, they don't get seen for months on end. And then during that time, their conditions get pretty worse. And I think what's happened now with a lot of young people is a lot of people are just on their phones and they've become more insular. And I think by trying this out, people can actually get on the outdoors, get social again and try different things that could potentially help their mental health for the better.
But they're not going to be able to... It's not a case of just saying you need to go and do some gardening. They're going to have to sort of go to a gardening club or something. It's going to cost a bit of money.
And they're going to have a mentor and they're going to have a buddy. So this is going to help. To be honest, I think this is a better idea than putting people on prescriptions and medicines. Even though they do help, it's still not helping them be social again and kind of get out of the insular world that they can feel when you are battling mental health.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how newspaper like The Guardian, which basically was fully belt and braces behind locking everyone in their homes for 2 years, is now suddenly realising it might be good for mental health to get outdoors. Amazing, isn't it? What a U-turn.
Well, no.
Strokes for
It's
different
true.
folks.
You don't play fair with it, Martin.
But that's what they did.
Well, they did, but that's because they're saying if we didn't do that, then half of us would be dead by now.
I don't think so. And also, if you want to improve your mental health, stop reading The Guardian.
Oh, there you go. I'm sure. But a lot of people would disagree with you on that one.
What a way to finish the paper review.
Maybe not our viewers and listeners.
It's coming up to 10 minutes
Just
to
try to
9.
be balanced.
Martin, Stephanie, thank you very much.
I've known him for years. How many years have I known you?
Way too long, mate.
Way too long. He's always been trouble, let me tell you. Always been trouble. And Stephanie, we won't see you because I'm off after today till Friday. But you're not in this weekend,
I'm not in this
are you?
weekend, but I'll be back next weekend.
Oh, good. Look forward to
back
that.
in my showbiz domain.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear. Thank you both. Let's bring you up to date with all the top stories at 8:49. And the Office for National Statistics has published new figures showing the impact of the increased cost of living for people across Great Britain. They say the lowest priced grocery items have increased in cost by about 17% over the last 12 months. The rise in prices is similar to the 15% rise in the official measure of inflation for food and drink.
Police will now have to consider the views of domestic abuse and sexual assault victims before releasing suspects from custody. New bail reforms will see officers told to only release them under investigation when it's necessary and proportionate. Well, the changes will be introduced this week.
The Irish musician Bob Geldof has said he backs the climate change protesters who threw soup over Van Gogh's sunflowers. Two Just Stop Oil activists threw the soup at the painting in the National Gallery on the 14th. Sir Bob said they're not killing anyone, but climate change will. And apologies if you could hear me kissing everyone as we were leaving the studio this morning. Stephanie can't leave without a little bit of a...
Well, it's good you and Martin have kissed and made up as well.
Oh, me and Martin have known each other for years. I disagree with a lot of what he says, but that doesn't mean you can't be pally with someone.
That is true.
The whole point of what we do here on GB News, you agree to disagree.
Well, that is generally the idea. And, yes, if you look at our GB News inbox, there's certainly an awful lot of often very colourful and contradictory views, and do keep them coming in because they do mould and shape the programme and the features that we put on as well.
Exactly.
GB Views at gbnews.uk.
Now, how many sleeps until Christmas?
I don't know, but 2 months to go, we know.
Father Christmas will be getting ready.
And it might be that you're thinking, when do I get the decorations out? But, of course, energy prices have been on our minds. Should we be dimming the bulbs, considering the higher cost of our energy bills?
Yeah, we can't really dim those LED lights on the Christmas tree, can you? They're not overly dimmable, I don't think. Just have to let them flash away. Well, let's talk to Mr. Christmas himself. That's Andy Park, who is famous for keeping his Christmas lights on all year round. Morning to you. Was that a glass of wine first thing in the morning? Good on you, sir.
Very Merry Christmas.
Oh, blimey, next too early. And look, what are you doing this year? I mean, the energy bill's going up. It's going to affect you disproportionately, isn't it?
Well, at one time it did. I thought to myself, I'm going to keep everything as it is just to see how it goes. But, I'm a little bit worried about the bills going up. I don't think I've really seen it on my electric bill just yet, but I'm looking very closely. But a lot of my lights are now LED, so I've tried to cut down that way. And I don't really keep them on so much, in the summer because the sun's shining. You can't see them anyway. But, this time of year, it's time to keep the lights on 24/7.
Oh, just looking at some of the lights you've got, it's one heck of a display you've got in there. Do you know, like say 12 months ago, sort of December 12 months ago, when things were a little bit more normal, I mean, do you know what it was costing you then, sort of for the month, having them on?
Well, easily it's costing about £1,400 a year. It's I try to get it down a little bit. I succeeded, but then it goes up again. And this time it's going to be scary. I'm not really sure how much it's going to go up to. Well, I wouldn't really know that until, probably the end of the year, But I'm worried a little bit. But it's important to keep the lights on, of course, because it's Christmas.
I think lots of people will have a compromised Christmas this year, when it comes to presents, food, travelling to see families, that's getting expensive, and then decorations. What do you make of, there's calls from campaigners, let's say, to Kew Gardens who are saying you shouldn't be putting on this really energy costly display. Do you think that's the sort of right approach to be taking?
I don't. No, I think, they should still go ahead because there's a lot of money being wasted here, there and everywhere still. And Christmas is quite an important time of the year for all the children. And, there's a lot of people that don't like Christmas, but all the kids love Christmas. Don't take it away from them. Keep it going. Keep the tradition going. Keep the lights on. Whatever. We always find money in the end. And not only that, for everybody else apart from me, it's just one day. Well, it's the run-up as well, but it's one day. And I really do think it's important just to keep on going. Try that bit extra harder.
I'll tell you what I notice is that I've seen more Christmas decks going up already roundabouts where I live, Andy, and that's because when the country's in the doldrums, we need Christmas for a bit of cheering up, don't we?
I think we do, yeah. I mean, all the dull news that we've had lately, sadly, the Ukraine war and all that stuff, and we need something to put a smile on our faces back here and be happy and pull together, enjoy each other, and share everything. That's my motto. That's what I say. And that's what I do.
Good on you. Just very briefly before we let you go, you have Christmas every day. Does Father Christmas come every day as well?
That's one thing that don't unless I beg him to. But I do have a great time. I eat a Christmas dinner every day. Watch the Queen's speech every day. Still, although she's passed on, God rest her. It'll be the King's speech shortly, I think, as well as the Queen's speech. I'll be doing both of them. Wrap presents for myself up, put them under the tree, open the next day, write cards to myself, rush out, put them in the door, open them, just because not everybody sends me cards. They want to send me cards. That'd be lovely. Please,
I'm sure.
Just a card would do.
Well, they might do. They might do that. And really good to talk to you. Happy Christmas.
And the same to you. God bless you and everyone, all your watchers, all your listeners. God bless. Rest in peace.
There you go.
That sounds like quite a lot of Christmas admin to be doing with every day, wrapping presents and...
Well,
I think...
gives you a smile, why not? Let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Coming up, we're going to be hearing from a Rishi Sunak supporter.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Rishi Sunak tells Conservatives to unite or die as he prepares to take over as Prime Minister.
A very good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the 25th of October. This is Breakfast on GB News Today with Stephen and Rosie.
Let's have a look at your headlines this morning. And Rishi Sunak will become Prime Minister today. After meeting the King, there was a national anthem for you. Meanwhile, Liz Truss is preparing to hold her last cabinet meeting in about 15 minutes. Then she'll make a farewell statement outside Downing Street just after 10.
Well, new figures have been released by the ONS showing supermarket groceries increased in cost by around 17% over the last year. Vegetable oil, pasta, those are the type of foods rising the most. One of the biggest challenges facing the new Prime Minister.
And the Pride of Britain Awards took place last night, celebrating the achievements of people who make a significant contribution to our country. None of these people, they're just the celebrities who turned up. Very nice of them too. We're going to meet one of those worthy winners in about 10 minutes.
Please do get in touch across the programme this morning. What are your views on the new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak? He said the party needs to unite or die. Which of those two do you think it will be? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So, the new leader of the Conservative Party, Rishi Sunak, will meet King Charles this morning, where he will be formally appointed as the new Prime Minister. It's after he addressed the country yesterday.
It is the greatest privilege of my life to be able to serve the party I love and give back to the country I owe so much to. The United Kingdom is a great country, but there is no doubt we face a profound economic challenge. We now need stability and unity, and I will make it my utmost priority to bring our party and our country together.
Despite those calls for unity, some Conservative Party supporters have been cancelling their memberships following Rishi's victory.
Well, we've been getting reaction from across the country, and here's what people in Mr Sunak's constituency of Richmond in Yorkshire had to say.
Well, he's been good as far as a local MP goes. I mean, the times that I've had any problems, they've been sorted pretty fast. We'll have to wait and see what the Prime Minister's going to be like.
Brilliant. He's an excellent constituency MP, always has been, works hard, very nice person. I think he's sensible, clever. I think he'll make a really good PM.
Nice bloke. They just need to know what the public want, don't they? Bring everything down. Back down to where it should be.
Well, we've also been out in Birmingham asking locals there what they make of the new Prime Minister.
He's part of the party that all the scandals was with, so I don't see why he should be in charge. It's the same group as Boris, really, so I think it's a pure joke.
It's best of a bad job, I think, to be quite honest. I don't know, I'd rather they weren't in power, but after the last lot, it's just been ridiculous.
Boris, I think he did well, overwhelmed by Partygate and everything. Just in a bad state at the moment, so...
Well, loads of you getting in touch on this, as you won't be surprised to hear. A lot of people say they're very angry about this, but some people being a bit more pragmatic. Jeff, morning to you, says, best of luck to Rishi and our country. Condolences to Boris. He will be back, but it's no good to hold grudges. I'm sure that Rishi and Boris both have regrets, but the country needs to move on. There may need to be a degree of deselection at the next general election to truly unite the Conservative Party. Well, that's a bit controversial at the end.
We also don't quite know what the Conservative Party is going to look like in terms of the makeup of the cabinet. We might get a bit more clarity on that this morning. In about 10 minutes' time, Liz Truss's current cabinet will be meeting. We don't know which of those people Rishi Sunak will want to stick in place and who he might want to swap out. Good morning to Carol, though, who says, I think we have to be positive and give Rishi a chance. He's clever. That's what we need. It needs a clever man to put this country right.
Yeah, and Dave says he's reserving judgment until you see what Rishi Sunak's going to do about the triple lock on pensions. Well, let's hear what our economics and business editor Liam Halligan has to say. He, as always, is on the money. Oh, we haven't got your little sting there, Liam, but never mind. So we'll move on.
A glimpse of your elbow, it has to be said. So we've seen a bit of you. The biggest problem facing the Rishi Sunak, I almost said the Chancellor. We've gone through so many different iterations of all these politicians.
He's the Chancellor and he's also the former Chancellor. Former Chancellor, because there's Nadim Zahawi.
That's true. Now, as Prime Minister, is going to be tackling the economy. How does he do it?
Well, it's going to be very tough, but I think the early signs are quite good. What we've seen since Rishi Sunak was confirmed as Prime Minister, pretty much since Boris Johnson dropped out as Prime Minister in the running, is borrowing costs falling. These are the 10-year gilt yield. This is the amount of money the government must pay to borrow, which is sort of the lowest form of borrowing and should be the lowest, most cheapest form of borrowing in the country. And that's fallen from about 4.2% per year interest rate to about 3.75% when I last looked in the newsroom just now. So that's a pretty chunky fall, and that reduction should start to be felt in mortgage rates that are offered to families trying to buy a home or people trying to remortgage on their existing home or other personal loans. So we can see immediately the impact in the real world of a bit more stability. The question now is whether or not the Tories can keep it together, because, of course, there is speculation that there's discontent about Rishi Sunak, not least among the Tory rank and file across the country.
But, of course, I mean, what the Tories are going to get behind, as any political people would, is success. And if you start to see, say, in the real world, some very immediate success of just the idea of stability and someone in number 10 who understands what happens in number 11, then they're going to get behind that, aren't they? They'd be fools not to.
Yeah, people will want to see that success, but I would say that, and there is kind of a little bit of a honeymoon period at the moment, a sort of warm, fuzzy feeling, the idea that, you know, a lot of people are saying that grown-ups are back in the room and so on, with the combination of Rishi Sunak in number 10 and, bar the shouting, Jeremy Hunt probably staying in number 11. I'd be amazed if they changed the Chancellor at this point, as if we hadn't had enough Chancellors in recent months. But I think that could soon change because the cost of living squeeze is getting tighter. There's going to be a big confrontation with trade unions over the next few weeks and months, not least in the public sector, because the public sector pay rounds are coming up and the government needs to decide if it is going to award pay increases that are up there with inflation. So that would be 10%. How would the 4/5 of people who work in the private sector feel if they're paying for 10% pay rises among the 1/5 of the people who work in the public sector?
But he's got a very strong argument, hasn't he? When he turns around and says, well, actually, my priority is getting inflation down. So rather than paying you up to inflation, we want to get inflation down and get inflation down quickly. How can he go about that?
I think that's true, but the public sector people will say we haven't had a decent pay rise, and they haven't for a while. Our pay rises are below the rate of inflation that we have had, and then the private sector will say that as well. So I do think there'll be a lot of discontent. And you talk about the cost of living, Stephen. The ONS, I've got a graphic here. The Office for National Statistics brought some numbers out this morning. If we can have a quick look at them here. These are food price increases from September 21 to September 2022. We're told the headline rate of inflation is 10%, but if you're buying vegetable oil, up 65%, pasta, up 60%, tea, crikey, tea, this country's built on cups of tea, and tea prices are up 46%. Why have I picked out these foodstuffs? Because these are some of the most basic commodities that are bought, not least by lower income families. And what you're seeing there is the increased transport costs. You're seeing also the impact of the war in Ukraine. You know, pasta and vegetable oil, that's wheat and sunflower seeds and all kinds of other seeds which come from Russia and Ukraine. So there you're seeing the immediate impact of this East-West economic war. And the reality is, we've often said here on GB News that the headline rate of inflation is much, much higher for lower income families.
Yeah. OK. Liam, for now, thank you. Let's get the views then of former Justice Minister Victoria Atkins, who joins us now. Good morning to you. I mean, look, you've got to hope for party unity and all the rest of it at the moment. Whether that'll happen or not, I don't know. But this is one heck of an in-tray for someone walking into number 10.
She understands that. You know, let's not forget that Rishi was Chancellor for just under a month by the time the COVID pandemic hit us, the economy shut down, and we were all sitting at home, huddled around our televisions, wondering, frankly, how businesses were going to survive, how people were going to buy food for their families, because they didn't know where their salaries and their wages were coming from. And yet Rishi turned it around in the furlough scheme and all of the other business support schemes that he rolled out. He did that quickly, he did it compassionately, and he did it effectively. And so whilst there is an enormously difficult set of issues for Rishi to face, the fact is he's a brain box, and he's got the character, but also that sense of decency and compassion to deal with these issues step by step, as effectively as possible for our constituents and our country.
Rishi Sunak has to unite the party, but not only that, he's got to persuade the public of his credibility. How do you answer the ever-growing calls that say the public did not elect Rishi Sunak? He's got no mandate.
Well, first of all, I think even in the the few hours overnight that Rishi has become leader of the Conservative Party, and of course he's not Prime Minister yet, he has to meet His Majesty the King for that to happen, but he has shown humility. He's also shown a sobering awareness of the challenges he faces. But also he has said to my colleagues, to us as a parliamentary party, look, we've got to get together to fix these problems for our country and for our constituency. And in fairness to Rishi, you know, the endorsements and the support that he gained over the weekend from all corners of the Conservative Party, I think really does show that we all as members of Parliament want to pull together. We want to focus on our country and the issues we're facing, because, you know, that's why I came into this to become a member of Parliament. It wasn't to have 6 weeks of pretty brutal, fast-paced politics. It was to help people, to help my constituents, and to be a force for good. And I think if we can remember that one unifying fact, actually there's a lot of goodwill there, and we'll be able to pull through.
But you talk about him being a man of decency and compassion, and that he demonstrated that. How does he then demonstrate that when we've got these public sector pay rounds coming up, where people are really, really struggling and want an inflation-meeting, if not inflation-busting pay rise? That's going to be very problematic for him.
It's going to be incredibly difficult, not just for the government, but of course for people who are working their socks off in the public sector, in our hospitals, on the policing our country, whatever their role. It's an incredibly difficult set of circumstances. And look, today we're a few hours, as I said, a couple of hours before Rishi takes over as Prime Minister. I hope you'll realise, I haven't been involved in those discussions, but he will get to work immediately with his Chancellor to find solutions to these, because, as I say, during the pandemic, he listened, he understood the problems that people were facing, and he came up with some very effective solutions. I think the next few months are going to be very difficult. I think we're all realising that, with all of the international factors as well as domestic factors here at home. But, you know, the energy price escalation is going to continue with Putin. That's why Liz Truss did such a good thing announcing her energy price guarantee. But we know there's also food inflation, you've just been talking about it, and other problems and challenges for people's purses and pockets. So bear with us. Rishi will be Prime Minister in a couple of hours. He's going to set out his vision, And I very much hope and expect, actually, that we, the Parliamentary Party, will unite behind him to help him deliver these solutions for our constituents and our country.
You keep talking about solutions. The opposition will say many of the problems that your party are facing right now are self-inflicted. What are the solutions to those?
Well, I think in fairness, actually, we know that we're not the only economy in the world that is facing difficulties. You look across the world, there are challenges with all central banks that have engaged in quantitative easing over the last few years. That has built up, it seems, problems now in terms of the cost of debt and interest, the knock-on impact on interest rates and so on. We also know, coming out of the pandemic, I've had many conversations with businesses who've said to me that the supply chains that before the pandemic used to work without any problem, any hitch, now, because of the backlog with the pandemic, businesses are having difficulties getting hold of materials or shipping things out. This will all take time, and it's, we will need international solutions for some of this. But here at home, the markets have stabilised in the last 24 hours. That is a significant factor. I think it shows confidence in Rishi going forward. The markets know Rishi as a former Chancellor. Of course, they know him. They know of his professional background before he came into politics as well. And of course, during the summer, he was delivering some of these very, very difficult messages. He was talking about tackling inflation. I think I came onto your programme to talk about it. We've got to tackle inflation because so much else flows from that. And he has also identified what can happen when the markets take fright and don't believe that, do not agree with the government of the day. So all of this Rishi will take on board with his Chancellor, and we will begin, as I say, to see solutions. But please, I do not underestimate the scale of the challenge ahead of us all, because I think this winter is going to be very, very difficult.
Victoria Atkins, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Let's head to our political editor, Dan McCaffrey, who's outside number 10 for us this morning. Do you know what struck me, Darren, talking to Victoria Atkins there, that although it's a familiar message of this is going to be extremely difficult, there seems to be a sense of calm that we haven't had for quite some time. It does feel a little bit more grown up somehow.
Well, that's the argument, of course, that Rishi Sunak has put forward, hasn't he, to Conservative MPs, that he is going to provide that element of stability. We have seen that somewhat with the markets. Victoria is entirely right in that. We know that he's managed to get a large portion of the Conservative Party, in terms of his MPs, on side too. The big question is, of course, he has not yet started making those really, really eye-watering, I think Jeremy Hunt called them, decisions, and that means that there will be controversy and difficulties, and I suspect some points misjudgments in politics, and that will be tricky, of course, for the new Prime Minister. But it is quite extraordinary. I am back here in number 10. There are hundreds of journalists again. They are starting to sign people to lay out the microphones for the podium that's going to appear behind me in the next hour or so. Liz Truss at the moment is hosting her last cabinet as Prime Minister. We saw all the cabinet ministers go in the last 30 minutes or so. The question obviously to them is, will they still be in their jobs by this evening? Frankly, many of them will not. And we're going to see, as his first act as Prime Minister, one of the reshaping of the cabinet, and that is going to be a really difficult task, because he has made it clear he's going to have to try and reflect the different factions of the Conservative Party, and that means having people like Boris Johnson supporters inside the tent rather than outside. So Liz Truss is going to speak in just an hour's time, less than an hour's time. She's going to go off to see the King. Then Rishi Sunak's going to slip into Buckingham Palace, accept the King's invitation to form a government, and then we will hear from the new Prime Minister just behind me at around 11:35 this morning.
And we'll bring that to you all here, of course. Darren, thank you very much. Stationed there outside number 10, providing analysis for us as the day goes on. It's coming up to 20 minutes past 9 here on the programme. We're going to be speaking to a blindness campaigner who won the Lifetime Achievement Award at last night's Pride of Britain.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, mate.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Now, last night was the Pride of Britain Awards, and the winner of the Lifetime Achievement Award was Jill Allen King, who won for being a leading campaigner for the blind.
Well, in her speech, Jill mentioned how her efforts have changed the lived experience of blind and partially sighted people across the nation. We are delighted to say Jill joins us now in the studio. Jill, thank you very much. I know you said you've come in. It's been a late night.
Very late.
So thanks for coming in for us first thing.
Thank you.
Just explain, what award was it that you got yesterday?
It was the Lifetime Achievement Award for all the work that I've done voluntarily, well, since I went totally blind when I was 64. In 1964, not when I was 24, and it was 1964.
So what happened to you then?
Initially, I was born fully sighted, but I had measles on my first birthday in 1941, and I had to have my left eye completely removed. And the other eye, I only had about 80% of vision, and I really should have gone to a special school for blind children, because that's what used to happen in those days. But my mum didn't want me to go to a special school. She wanted me to live at home. I was the only child. My dad was away in the army. And so I grew up with partial sight. I had a good artificial eye, wore glasses, so nobody really knew. And my mum didn't want me to tell anybody. And I just lived a normal life. I went to an ordinary school. I took my medals for ballroom and Latin American dancing. I was trained in hotel and catering, and I worked in the City of London for 7 years as a chef. And I was a captain in the Girls' Life Brigade. So, and I rode a bike. Not on the pavement, so.
No, good,
we weren't
good.
allowed to in those days.
But then life changed
And then,
dramatically.
yes, I saved up 5 years to get married. And at my wedding reception, I went totally blind.
At the reception?
Yeah, at my wedding reception. I'd had not a dream, but my eye had gone blurry the night before. My dad had phoned the doctor and he just said, oh, it's nerves. And in the morning, yes, I got up and I got dressed and, you know, I got married, got to the wedding reception and all my eye went blurry again. And eventually, I mean, long story, it's all written in my book.
So let me hold the books up.
Jill. That's just Jill.
Just Jill.
That's my
There you go. And then you've got Jill's leading ladies. Oh, your 6 guide dogs.
My 6 guide dogs.
Now, I should point out that Jagger, who you've got under the table here, who's your guide... I'm just going to hold this up for our viewers at home who are watching on TV. Where's camera 3? There you go. And that's Jagger's medal that he's been awarded.
Yes, Paul O'Grady they presented me with mine first, my big angel that they give you, and then Jagger was presented with that, and he got a standing ovation of his own.
Oh, I bet he did. I bet he did.
But one thing you've done, Jill, is try to make life easier for people who are partially sighted or living with blindness, and things like access with guide dogs, simple things we would assume you already had access to.
Yes, well, when I went after I went totally blind, I spent 7 years virtually housebound, never going out on my own. I had no confidence to go out on my own. Had my daughter to bring up, and it wasn't until 1971 that I decided to go for a guide dog, Topsy, who changed my life completely. But from the work, even before I went for her, I was told by somebody that I wouldn't be allowed in a store in Southend. Although it was a clothing shop that had a cafe, and I was told I wouldn't be allowed in there. And the first thing I did when I got home, the next morning, threw to bits that I could take Jacqueline to the library on my own, you know, without my husband coming, and I was told to wait outside with Topsy. Oh. And so from then on, I mean, there were so many places we weren't allowed to go with guide dogs. Restaurants, cafes, all sorts of House of Commons, on the railways. We weren't allowed to travel in sleeping cars or dining cars. We couldn't go to take them to Pontins or Butlins holiday camps. So that's what I did. I did a lot of campaigning, and eventually, you know, things did get better, but there were still so many other issues, like the pavements. And 1978, on behalf of the National Federation of the Blind, we launched the Give Us Back Our Pavements campaign, because they were the things that stopped me from going out then and stopped blind. 200 people go blind every day in this country. And there's just so many hazards which the public could help cut back their overhanging.
And you've made their lives easier, which has been recognised yesterday. Thank you so much, and huge congratulations.
I wish we had more time to chat, but we look forward to hearing what you had to say last night when it sort of aired on television on Thursday. Thank you so much, Jill,
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Jagger, by the way, down there, having a little snooze. That is it from us for this morning. But breakfast is back at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Up next, it's Tom.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it